Chapter 723. Along the way, Lin Sun met many figures, including imperial practitioners and voodoo barbarians. Even the top figures of reincarnation developing realm almost went out in groups. It was rare to meet a single person exploring here. Along the way, Lin Sun didn't stay. Whenever he noticed someone, he would avoid in advance and take a detour. He didn't want to fight. Boom! Before long, Lin Sun once again noticed that there was an enemy in front of him in advance. He was about to avoid it. Unexpectedly, a blood-red thunderbolt suddenly fell from the sky. In an instant, a group of strong voodoo barbarians thousands of meters away were instantly smashed. Their bodies disintegrated and disappeared in the blood-red thunderbolt, leaving no bones behind. That scene was so abrupt that Lin Sun couldn't help but take a breath. He looked up, only to find that the void was so vast that he couldn't find the source of the blood-red thunderbolt. This was the horror of Mulberry Forest. There were unpredictable natural disasters and anomalies. Even if you were very careful, you might encounter various accidents and eventually die suddenly. Lin Sun pursed his lips, took a deep breath, and continued to move forward. This ominous and strange danger was undoubtedly a test of courage and fighting spirit. If it were an ordinary practitioner, he would have been frightened and turned back halfway. Lin Sun continued to move forward. Before long, wisps of clouds began to appear between heaven and earth, which were as red as blood with dazzling, evil spirits. This kind of blood fog was very strange. It blocked the perception of the spirit. If it wasn't prevented and resolved, it would invade the practitioner's body and corrode his spirit. Whoosh! Lin Sun pulled the insignificance bow to the fullest. After arriving here, the power of his spirit was blocked, and he could no longer perceive the danger. He could only rely on his fighting instinct to seek luck and avoid danger. However, the wonderful effect of insignificance bow was also reflected at this time. It had the power of true insight, which could see through the illusion. Sure enough, in an instant, Lin Sun's vision became open, no longer blocked by the blood fog, and he could see the situation thousands of meters away. A moment later, the broken sword hanging at his waist suddenly trembled, which made Lin Sun's black eyes brighten. He calmed down and perceived. Soon, he came to a gray-brown mound, which was sparse and unremarkable. But when he arrived here, the broken sword trembled more and more violently. Lin Sun stopped, squatted down, and dug the ground directly with the broken sword. The soil flew, and soon a hole was dug in front of the mound. Ding! When Lin Sun dug 5 feet deep, the broken blade was blocked, making a sound like metal clashing. At the same time, a soft silver-white light came into Lin Sun's sight. A piece of silver pattern rare jade stone. Lin Sun felt refreshed and took it out. This thing was as big as an alms bowl. It was silver all over and glowed like water. Kacha! Kacha! Lin Sun exerted strength in his fingers and crushed it, revealing a small verdant branch in the shape of a deer's antler. It was suffused with a green glow and emitted a strong vitality that made Lin Sun feel relaxed and happy. It was a leaf the last time, and it's a branch this time. However, both of them contain an indescribable aura of the grand Tao and vitality. Could it be that there was a divine tree that disintegrated in the past, yet its trunk and leaves didn't vanish, and they were instead sealed by these strange jades and buried beneath the ground after experiencing the passage of countless years? Mulberry Forest. Mulberry Forest. Perhaps, whether it's the leaves from last time or the branches this time, they all came from a mulberry tree that possesses inconceivable power. Lin Sun made a bold assumption. While thinking, he didn't hesitate to use the broken blade to absorb the vitality of this branch. In just a moment, the broken blade glowed with vitality, and the branch turned into powder. Lin Sun calmed down and perceived the broken blade. Although it was not obvious, it was a kind of improvement after all. Especially on the surface of the broken blade, the mysterious traces of Tao were looming like the moon in the water. Although they were still hazy and blurred, they had begun to become clear. Lin Sun's black eyes were bright. The power of the broken blade was terrible, and it could be called a fierce blade. If it could be further repaired and transformed, Lin Sun's combat effectiveness would undoubtedly be improved. In the following time, Lin Sun didn't rush forward. He wandered around and sensed the surroundings. As long as the broken blade trembled and buzzed, it meant that there must be some kind of treasure in the nearby area. This saved Lin Sun a lot of effort. He only needed to search according to the sensing of the broken blade, and he could get something. Several hours passed unconsciously. At this time, Lin Sun had collected 4 silver-patterned jades and 2 golden-patterned jades. There were leaves and branches hidden in them. Although they were all extremely small, they contained abundant, mysterious vitality. These were all refined by the broken blade. By this time, Lin Sun had roughly inferred that if he wanted to further transform the broken blade, these were just like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood, which couldn't satisfy him at all. However, Lin Sun was very patient. He didn't come to the mulberry forest for an unprecedented opportunity, nor did he want to participate in the treasure-snatching action that could make a king fight fiercely. Lin Sun was satisfied that the broken blade could be repaired and transformed once on this trip. Night fell. Even in the mulberry forest, it could still be clearly felt that the night was going to drown this place like a tide. Lin Sun trembled inexplicably all over, feeling a kind of unspeakable oppression, as if something terrible would happen when the night came. Boom! Suddenly, a dazzling lightning cut through the void, illuminating the world. At the same time, a terrible breath rushed out from the far distance. Even though it was extremely far away, Lin Sun could still see that it was a figure bathed in divine flame, appearing in the air, looking down at the shore, and fighting fiercely. King Yin Xiong of the Fire Barbarian Branch. Although Lin Sun had never seen this barbarian king, he could judge it at once. It was too conspicuous. His figure seemed to be bathed in divine flame, and his breath was terrifying and matchless. Only King Yin Xiong could have such spirit. However, what really moved Lin Sun was King Yin Xiong's opponent. It was a broken bronze spear. The spear's shadow rotated, and there was a terrible sign of collapse in the void. With a slight sweep, the sky and the earth collapsed. It fought with King Yin Xiong in the void, making the heaven and earth there seem to be torn apart, and it was dazzling. Lin Sun was about to see what was going on. Unfortunately, this battle broke out quickly and ended quickly. It was over in a few breaths. King Yin Xiong seemed to be defeated and retreated angrily. Before leaving, he roared, "It's just a broken holy weapon. I will surrender to you sooner or later." It was also these words that made Lin Sun's heart tremble inexplicably. A broken holy weapon, like a peerless master, made King Yin Xiong retreat. This night was not peaceful. As soon as this peerless battle ended, many terrifying breaths emerged and were distributed in different areas. Vaguely, there were roars of gods and demons, wails of ghosts and howls of wolves, echoing in the dark night, making people scalp numb. The strongmen distributed in various areas of the mulberry forest, whether they came from the Empire or from the Voodoo barbarian tribe, all stopped their actions at this moment and hid. When night fell, the bloodthirsty battlefield would be hundreds or thousands of times more terrifying than during the day, and it was even more dangerous in the mulberry forest. At this time, no one dared to act rashly. They hid in place and took the time to rest and recuperate. Seeing this, Lin Sun also hurriedly ran by Enchi, hid and began to meditate quietly. The mulberry forest at night was too terrifying. If one was not careful, he would definitely die in an instant. This night seemed to be very difficult to bear. Terrifying breaths appeared everywhere, stirring up the wind and clouds and spreading in all directions. Vaguely, the sound of gods weeping blood and ghosts howling echoed. Those who were not strong-willed might have already been frightened and possessed by the devil. Even Lin Sun had to run meditating magic to guard his mind. But even so, this night, he always felt that there were many cold thoughts sweeping over him, which scared him so much that he felt a chill down his spine. Only when dawn arrived and the veil of night gradually faded did all of this terrifying and unfathomable scene return to calm. The arrival of day caused all the experts that were distributed throughout the forest to heave a sigh of relief in their hearts. But all of them were clearly aware that many experts had probably already suffered calamity and were killed by the terrifying dangers that befell them during this night. Lin's son also got up and started to take action. Daytime was the best time to explore the mulberry forest, and he didn't want to waste any time. However, in the next few days, he found nothing. Instead, he met many strong voodoo barbarians, many of whom were in the half-step king realm. If he hadn't sensed them with true insight in advance and avoided them in advance, a fierce battle was inevitable. Although he found nothing, after several days of exploration, Lin's son had gradually adapted to the dangerous environment in the mulberry forest. Besides, he had preliminarily confirmed that he was close to the depths of the mulberry forest, and the strongmen he met on the way were more powerful and terrible than the other. Almost all of them were at the top of the reincarnation developing realm, and old monsters in the half-step king realm were not uncommon. However, the mulberry forest was so vast that it was almost a mysterious and dangerous world of devil soil. So Lin's son couldn't determine whether he could reach the end of the mulberry forest if he continued to explore. On this day, Lin's son came to a barren stone forest area, where the bloody mist covered the sky and the earth, which was extremely abnormal. Just as he was about to avoid it, the broken sword suddenly trembled more intensely than before, and even let out a clear sound, showing a wave of extreme desire. Lin's son hesitated for a moment, and finally gritted his teeth and rushed into the stone forest filled with bloody mist. In just a moment, he found something, a broken altar. Although it looked gray and broken, it gave out an ancient and boundless spirit, which was extremely extraordinary. An altar? How could there be such a thing in the mulberry forest? Lin's son stopped and went forward to have a look. He found that the broken altar had long been blurred and repaired. It should have been covered with mysterious patterns, but they had long been worn away, and only some mottled traces could be seen. At this time, the broken sword kept trembling, and the sharp blade gave out a strong wave, as if it was extremely eager for the thing hidden in the broken altar. Lin's son took a deep breath and went forward carefully. After making sure there was no danger, he began to dig. Crack, crack! The broken altar was easily destroyed in the excavation, and the ancient stone chips fell down. Just a moment later, Lin's son was shocked, and his heart was in turmoil. Below the altar, there was a gorgeous glow, flowing and shining, spewing out rays of divine light, like a dreamy rainbow. Shockingly, it was emitted by a pile of mysterious jade stones. There were golden patterns, silver patterns, black patterns, fire patterns, and water patterns. Densely packed, fist-sized jades were piled up there, overflowing with dazzling treasure light, as if it were real. Lin's son was so excited that he almost shouted. He had found nothing for many days, but today there were so many of them. Chapter 724. Clang. Without any hesitation, Lin's son inserted the broken sword into the pile of glowing jades. The broken sword buzzed, as if it was cheering. The blade was filled with obscure breath and began to absorb the vitality in it crazily. Lin's son couldn't help but be delighted and expectant. He had a hunch that even if the broken sword couldn't be completely transformed this time, its power would at least be improved a lot. At the same time, Lin's son also picked up a piece of strange jade and crushed it. Sure enough, there was a green leaf hidden in it. It was shaped like a copper coin and seemed to be carved out of jade, full of vitality. Lin's son tried to absorb it. Suddenly, a warm and mellow vitality turned into a rolling heat flow and poured into his whole body, making every inch of his pores open and his spirit flow lively. In an instant, he seemed to become an immortal. The physical strength consumed by the previous journey also recovered at this moment, reaching an unprecedented peak state. What moved Lin's son was that his spiritual power had been nourished and became more condensed and refined. What a mysterious life force! It has an unfathomably pure aura. Lin Sun felt it carefully. The benefits were not limited to these. Even his flesh and bones were nourished. Although it was extremely subtle, it was wonderful. Suddenly, a wisp of killing intent appeared and stabbed Lin Sun. Lin Sun's figure flashed and disappeared in place with ice dragon steps. Boom! A bone spear passed by and nailed to the ground in the distance, piercing a deep hole and raising dust all over the sky. If Lin Sun had been a little slower, his head would have been penetrated. Lin Sun's black eyes became cold and frightening. He had already pulled the insignificant bow in his hand and pointed it in one direction. There appeared a strong voodoo barbarian, like a shadow. It was almost impossible to be noticed in the bloody mist of the stone forest. A strong spiritual awakener of the dark barbarian. Get out of here if you don't want to die. This place is occupied by our voodoo barbarian tribe. The strong barbarian looked extremely domineering, and his eyes were firmly fixed on the place where the broken sword was inserted. There was a dense pile of strange jade stones that flowed with brilliant and resplendent colors. They were extremely eye-catching and couldn't be concealed at all. I think you are tired of living. Lin Sun shot an arrow without hesitation as he spoke. Bang! The bowstring, which was as red as blood, let out a clear cry. Around the bowed body made of white bones, there was a mysterious roar and the sound of wind and thunder. You are! The awakened dark barbarian's pupils shrank as if he recognized Lin Sun. His face suddenly changed, and he screamed and dodged to one side. Puff! But he was already a step too late. The spirit arrow pierced through the left side of his chest, and he felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He was fiercely smashed into the ground far away, and blood sprayed everywhere. A piece of trash like you dares to fight for territory like others? Crack! Lin Sun's figure flashed, and then he stomped down and crushed the chest of the dark barbarian spiritualist. It's you, Lin. Lin. The dark barbarian spiritualist died before he could finish his words. He was originally a top figure, but it was a pity that he met Lin Sun. He deserved to be unlucky. When Lin Sun was searching for trophies, he accidentally found that there were a lot of different kinds of strange jades in this guy's bag. There were more than 10 of them. This made Lin Sun realize that he was not the only one who had discovered the secret. Other strong practitioners might have known it by now. The broken sword was still absorbing power, and its edge was enshrouded in obscure halo. According to Lin Sun's estimation, it would take at least 10 minutes to refine all the vitality in these strange jades. But soon, Lin Sun frowned. In the distant mist, there was a sound of breaking through the air, and someone was coming here. Come on, over there. Ing Tong must have encountered some danger. I heard his scream. I'd like to see which human bastard dares to be so bold. In the stone forest filled with blood mist, a group of strong voodoo barbarians were full of killing intent. They were all awakened dark barbarians in groups, and there were more than 10 of them, which was shocking. Such a force could be regarded as a top force in the bloodthirsty battlefield, and they could launch a small-scale war. After all, awakened dark barbarians were rare. It was even rarer to see more than 10 dark barbarians in the bloodthirsty battlefield together. Generally, in the battles in the bloodthirsty battlefield, a powerful awakened dark barbarian could serve as a commander, and his status and power could be regarded as the top. However, similar scenes were very common in the mulberry forest. After all, this place was so horrible that even the kings of life and death realm had to be careful, not to mention the dark barbarians in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Have you heard that the young heavenly son of the empire, Lin Shi, has also entered the mulberry forest? Now, a group of tough and experienced voodoo barbarians are looking for him and want to kill him. Yes, the news has been spread many days ago. I also heard that Thunder Sky King has issued a decree to kill Lin Shi in the mulberry forest. One is to avenge Shi Zhen, and the other is to seize the mysterious bow in his hand. While moving forward carefully, these voodoo barbarians talked. Ho ho, this guy is really audacious. He dares to come to the mulberry forest alone. If he hid in the camp of the empire, we might not be able to do anything to him. But now, hey, if he doesn't die, I will kill myself immediately." An earth barbarian, awakened dark barbarian, sneered with disdain. In this action in the mulberry forest, the voodoo barbarians had gained the upper hand, and there were 3 real kings in the barbarian camp. Under such circumstances, it would be strange if they couldn't kill Lin Sure. Puff. However, as soon as he finished his words, a bloody hole was pierced through his neck. Because the penetrating force was so horrible, his whole head was blown off. Suddenly, other barbarians nearby were so shocked that they became stiff and dodged subconsciously. Clatter, blood sprayed out. The earth barbarian just vowed that he would kill himself if he couldn't kill Lin Sun, but his neck was immediately broken, and his headless body fell to the ground. Retribution? The other barbarians were covered in cold sweat. Their faces suddenly turned livid and ugly, and they roared, "Be careful, everyone! That damn Lin Sure must be nearby. He was killed in one blow. The rumor is true. The big bow in a little bastard's hand is too horrible." In the roar, they each took out their treasures and were extremely vigilant. Like frightened hedgehogs, they scattered. It was no wonder that they were so panicked. The rumor about Lin Sun had already spread throughout the barbarian army, and the fact that he killed Mangio, a half-step king, was even more heated. Now, all the barbarians knew that the reason why Lin Sure was so powerful was that he relied on the mysterious white bone bow in his hand and the black arrow obtained from the depths of the mine in Tiger Canyon. At this time, when they saw their companion die in front of them in the blink of an eye, and they didn't notice it at all, how could they not panic? It was too horrible. Such an arrow was so silent that even a spiritual awakened dark barbarian could not avoid it. Combined with the various rumors about Lin Sure, even a half-step king would be frightened. Shit, it's impossible to track the little bastard in the blood mist. A roar came out. Puff. But before the voice died away, the barbarian, awakened dark barbarian who had just roared, was shot to death on the spot. His death was even more tragic. An invisible spiritual arrow directly pierced through his mouth and pierced through his head. Another spiritual awakened dark barbarian was killed so abruptly that he didn't even notice the enemy's trace. All of a sudden, the other spiritual awakened dark barbarians felt their blood run cold. This scene was undoubtedly the most horrifying. The enemy seemed to be invisible, but he was everywhere, as if he could give them a fatal blow at any time. What was worse, in the stone forest filled with blood mist, they couldn't track the enemy at all. The scene became dead silent. No one dared to make a sound. They subconsciously thought that Lin Sure was using the sound to determine their location. But just a moment later, the cruel reality shattered their judgment. Another spiritual, awakened dark barbarian was killed. A spiritual arrow pierced through his skull, causing blood and white brain matter to splash out. The scene was so bloody that it was almost disgusting. Run! All of a sudden, the rest of the spiritual, awakened dark barbarians broke down and lost their will to fight. They couldn't even find the enemy, but the enemy seemed to be keenly aware of everything about them. How could they fight? They began to flee in panic like stray dogs. In the process, another spiritual, awakened dark barbarian was killed. His buttocks were pierced through. He lay on the ground and screamed for a while before he breathed his last. Peace was restored in the area soon. It didn't take long for Lin Sun's figure to appear in the bloody mist. His dark eyes were deep. He pulled the insignificance bow and glanced around. After making sure that all the enemies had escaped without hiding, he turned around and left. But when he returned, Lin Sun had 4 more bags in his hand, which were his trophies containing some strange items. There were all kinds of strange jade stones, as well as some blood-stained pieces of iron, broken pieces of bronze, and some other unknown things. Obviously, these are the treasures collected by the barbarians from the mulberry forest, so they must be extraordinary. Lin Sun didn't look at them carefully. After he returned, the strange jades on the ground had been completely refined by Duanren. Clang! Lin Sun pulled out Duanren. The original dark color of Duanren had now become almost transparent, and the blade was filled with misty starlight. At the same time, some clear Taoist patterns finally appeared on the surface of Duanren. Unfortunately, even if it could be seen, it was only a small part of it, so it was impossible to see its mystery. However, Lin Sun was still keenly aware that the Duanren had changed. It was as light as a feather in his hand, but its power and momentum were obviously much higher than before. Lin Sun resisted the urge to test the power of Duanren, took a deep breath, and turned away. He couldn't stay here any longer. He had to leave as soon as possible. Whoosh! Not long after Lin Sun left, one figure after another came roaring in with terrible breath. Just the invisible power emitted from them shattered all the nearby blood mist and spread around, making the scene here very clear. Chapter 725. This guy has just escaped. There is still a trace of his breath here. A middle-aged man with black and cyan skin said. His eyes were like a pair of cyan scorching suns, which could capture people's souls. His name was Mu Lingfeng, a half-step king of the Voodoo Barbarian branch, ranked 47th on the king-level bounty list of the empire. His strength was even more terrible than that of Mangio, who was killed by Lin. Thundercloud King has ordered that this guy must be killed this time. Otherwise, he will become an inestimable, horrible figure in the human empire in the future. A powerful old man with golden hair and beard and copper-like skin said in a deep voice. He was a half-step king of the Gold Barbarian branch, named Jean Dujan. It's not easy to kill him. Don't forget that he has a pair of bows that can kill a half-step king. Kanglin Shui, a half-step king of the Water Barbarian branch, said. She was a beautiful woman with snow-white hair. She was mysterious and charming, covered by mist. Don't be nervous. According to the analysis of our king, this guy can't fully exert the power of this pair of bows with his cultivation of Tao Insight Realm. The leader of the group, Mu Lingfeng, had a calm expression as he said calmly, moreover, his strength can only support him for one arrow at most. This is our chance to kill him. As long as we avoid his arrow, the rest will be simple. Inke, the young master of the Dark Barbarian tribe, wants to capture this guy alive. Shall we do it? Jean Dujan frowned and asked. If there's a chance, we can. If not, we'll kill him directly. Mu Lingfeng took a deep breath, and a terrible killing intent burst out of his cyan pupils. This time, we can't let this guy escape. Jean Dujan and Kanglin Shui also nodded. Lin Shire, a human practitioner who set foot on the most powerful path of cultivation as a young man, was a monster who had killed a half-step king. At the same time, he was a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos. No matter what kind of identity he had, there was enough reason for them to kill him at all costs. Otherwise, once such a monster rose, it would be an immeasurable disaster for the Voodoo Barbarian tribe. Let's go. Wood Spirit Peak began to move. This time, they had dispatched a total of 3 half-step kings after hearing the news. It could be said that they were fully prepared. From this, it could be seen how much importance they attached to Lin Sun. They had already treated him as their #1 enemy. If this scene were spread to the outside world, it would probably cause a huge uproar. After all, who had ever seen 3 half-step kings attacking at the same time to deal with a mere Paradise Realm youngster? This was something that had never happened before. This is troublesome. Lin Sun frowned. He was running away, his figure flickering endlessly. This area was filled with endless blood mist, but Lin Sun knew that there was an enemy chasing after him all the way. What made Lin Sun most awe-inspiring was that he had tried to get rid of his opponent many times, but failed every time. It seems like a half-step king level old monster has made his move. Only they would dare to chase after me without any fear. They don't have the slightest intention of concealing their strength. Lin Sun looked dignified. He could perceive this kind of pursuit, not because of how strong his perception was, but because the other side didn't hide their killing intent and hostility at all. Half-step kings. Although Lin Sun had killed Mangio, it was with the power of insignificant spiritual bow and sky arrow. After shooting that arrow, almost all the strength in his body was drained. Now he had broken through to the Tao Insight Realm, and the power in his body was more than twice as strong as before. But if he really used the insignificant spiritual bow desperately, Even Lin Sun himself couldn't guarantee that he could shoot the second arrow. When dusk came, Lin Sun, who had been running away, looked more and more dignified. He could perceive that the enemy behind him was getting closer and closer. Whoosh! His figure flashed, and he took a deep breath, ran Huai Chi, and hid in a rock gully thousands of meters away. The breath of this boy suddenly disappeared here. Shortly after Lin Sun hid, 3 half-step kings, with Spirit Peak, Jin Duzhen, and Kanglin Shui, arrived. They didn't hide their breath. The terrifying power swept out like a storm, dispelling all the blood mist nearby. Do you remember the news of the battle in Tiger Canyon last time? At that time, this boy also hid with a means of concealment. Jin Duzhen said leisurely. His eyes were like a pair of golden suns, shooting out 2 beams of light, scanning the nearby world. So, he's just repeating the same trick. If there is no accident, he should be hiding nearby. Before Jin Duzhen finished his words, he waved his sleeve, and a terrifying golden ripple spread around with his body as the center. Boom! In an instant, the void collapsed inch by inch, the earth cracked, and the cracks spread around. The rocks along the way were all crushed like paper. In an instant, the world seemed to explode, and the terrifying power made the world change color. This was the power of a half-step king. Although he was not a real king, he had 1 foot in the king's realm, beyond the spirit awakening realm. His means were extremely terrifying. How cruel! Lin Sun, who was hiding in the dark, was more aware of the power of a half-step king. If he confronted him head-on, he had absolutely no chance of winning. Whoosh! Without hesitation, Lin Sun subconsciously ran ice steps with all his strength, jumped out, and fled to the extreme distance. Haha, is that all you can do? You were just fighting like a trapped beast. With a sneer, Jin Duzhen launched an attack. Golden light flowed around his body, dazzling, and the terrifying power made the world wail. Boom! A golden bone sword flew out, emitting a dazzling light, and chopped at Lin Sun, who was far away. Boom! The 3,000-meter-long golden sword Qi was so dazzling that it seemed to split the world in half. The scene was too horrible. Lin Sun couldn't dodge at all. Since he had been locked, it was useless to dodge. At this critical moment, he pulled out the broken blade without hesitation and faced the sword Qi head-on. Clang! A deafening sound of collision resounded. Amidst the eruption of golden light, a scene that shocked everyone happened. That thick golden sword aura was actually cut in half by the broken blade. It was the power of a half-step king, which was branded with the understanding and truth of the great Tao of a king. How could it be ordinary? But now it was cut in half just like that. All of a sudden, Jin Duzhen's pupil shrank, and he was a little surprised. The broken blade in his hand is mysterious. It should be an incredible treasure as well. On the other side, Mu Lingfeng said, with blazing light bursting out of his eyes. He suddenly found that if he could kill this young man, he might get a lot of great treasures. It should be so. Kanglin Shui also nodded, and her eyes flickered. She was also tempted. At the same time, Lin Sun's body was shaken back, and his qi and blood were surging. He was so upset that he almost coughed up blood, but he forced himself to hold back and kept running. The broken blade has indeed transformed. It is so sharp that it can cut the sword Qi of a half-step king. I'm afraid that even the armor with spiritual tattoos can't do that. Unfortunately, these old bastards are too hard to deal with. Otherwise, I would definitely feed the broken blade with their blood. Lin Sun gritted his teeth with hatred. He tightened his body and fully activated ice steps. His whole body was like a flash of lightning, escaping in the bloody mist. At this moment, he forgot the direction and just wanted to escape. Being chased by 3 half-step kings was really a desperate feeling. If the vast universe arc was still there, Lin Sun would not be so embarrassed. Unfortunately, the space law on the bloodthirsty battlefield was too extreme. Any treasure with the essence of Sumeru in a mustard seed could not be brought here. Run. It was the first time for Lin Sun to run the Ice Dragon steps with all his might. Vaguely, There seemed to be shadows of ice dragons flashing in the void around him, taking him to travel in the void and shuttling forward, which was mysterious and amazing. This allowed his speed to increase by a large margin compared to before. Even Mu Lingfeng and others who were chasing behind him were a little surprised. Lin Sun's speed was even faster than that of the top figures of the Dark Barbarian clan. They also didn't hold back and chased more and more fiercely. If Lin Sun escaped this time, they would be really disgraced. Crack! Crack! In Lin Sun's palm, the strange jade stones burst into pieces, and the abundant vitality contained in them was absorbed by Lin Sun without hesitation. Compared with high-grade spiritual crystals, these strange jade stones containing mysterious vitality had an extremely incredible effect on replenishing physical strength. Sure enough, in just a moment, Lin Sun's consumed physical strength was restored, and he reached an unprecedented peak state. Moreover, as he continued to absorb the mysterious vitality, this state continued all the time, even making Lin Sun feel full. Little guy, this is the mulberry forest. The deeper you go, the more horrible it is. If you wander around, I'm afraid you may be killed before we catch up with you. Why don't you stay here and have a good talk with us? Maybe, if you cooperate well, we will leave you a whole body so that you won't die too miserably. Behind him came the calm and indifferent voice of Mu Lingfeng. Leave your mother's body intact. Lin Sun in front of him suddenly turned around, and the insignificant spiritual bow in his hand was fully drawn. At this moment, a pitch-black sky arrow suddenly burst out. Boom! The void burst into pieces, and a wisp of the great Tao resounded between heaven and earth, which was magnificent and sacred. Strange scenes appeared one after another, including the explosion of stars and the collapse of all things. There were also horrible scenes of suns sinking and golden crows crying blood. As the sky arrow was shot out, the earth and void along the way were instantly destroyed, turning into violent turbulence, sweeping and crushing all the way. Heaven and earth trembled at this moment. Mu Lingfeng's eyes almost popped out, and he couldn't calm down. How could he expect that Lin Sun, who was running away, would react so fiercely? Just a few words stimulated him to shoot the arrow desperately. Howl! Mu Lingfeng let out a scream, like a frightened old rabbit, and quickly dodged to one side. Chapter 726. Puff! Although he had tried his best to dodge, would Lingfeng have been seriously injured. His ribs were pierced by the sky arrow, leaving a bloody hole. Heavenly sounds, too, the terrible destructive power almost tore his body apart. He couldn't help but let out a shrill scream, shaking the 9 heavens. This was the power of the sky arrow. The only pity was that would Lingfeng had been prepared this time, so he was lucky not to follow in the footsteps of Mangio. Jean Dujin on one side gasped, and his expression changed slightly. This kind of arrow made him tremble. It was too terrible and unbelievable. Tut! Kanglin Shui was waiting for an opportunity at this moment. Her figure flashed, and she took out an animal bone bowl. It was full of water light, pouring down like a great river. The animal bone bowl was holy and full of water light. This was a secret treasure called Overturned Water Bowl, which could store treasures. While in the blink of an eye, the blue sky arrow was enveloped by the rippling light of the water. Collect! She let out a clear rebuke, and a hint of joy appeared on her face. But in the next moment, her face suddenly changed, and she screamed. An enormous bang resounded as the sky arrow of sky emanated its invisible divine might and suddenly struggled free of its restraints. The dark red tip of the arrow flashed, and it pierced through the overturned bowl with a bang. Hula, the fragments of the overturned water bowl fluttered, making Kanglin Shui scream in pain. This was a treasure in her hand. Who would have thought that it would be destroyed so easily? This was really called going for wool and coming home shorn. The sky arrow had already returned to Lin Sun's hand. This was not because of Lin Sun's strength, but because there was a resonance between the sky arrow and the insignificant longbow. Whoosh! At this time, Lin Sun continued to escape. In the rear, with Lingfeng, Kanglin Shui, and Jean Dujin looked extremely bad. They were livid and gloomy, and they were almost crazy with anger. The arrow just now made them look very embarrassed. What made them lose face most was that they, three half-step kings, couldn't stop Lin Sun in such a situation. Chase! Would Ling Feng roared like an injured and angry ancient beast. I'm going to kill this boy and eat his flesh and blood. Kanglin Shui screamed. He has already shot one arrow, so he is destined to not have the ability to shoot a second arrow. His time of death has come. Jean Dujin's eyes were filled with killing intent. Boom! Escape lights tore through the skies. Their killing intent surged, not hiding anything as they continued to chase after him. Kacha! Kacha! One stone after another exploded in Lin Sun's hand, and the mysterious vitality in them poured into Lin Sun's body, replenishing his physical strength. After shooting the blue sky arrow just now, he still had a portion of his strength left and hadn't used up all of it. The reason was that he was now in the heavenly passage realm, which was completely different from when he killed Manjiu. Even so, it was impossible for Lin Sun to shoot the second arrow with the remaining power. However, with the help of the Jade Stone, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about the recovery of his strength. Just now, what a terrifying power. Isn't that Lin Shire, the spiritual tattooist grandmaster in the number 7 camp of the Empire? Not long after Lin Sun and Mu Lingfeng left, a group of Imperial practitioners appeared in this area. They had noticed the shocking movement here from a distance, and even saw the horrible vision when Lin Sun shot the arrow. It must be him. Didn't you hear that Mu Lingfeng, the half-step king of the Wood Barbarians, was seriously injured? His scream shook the world. The expressions of these cultivators changed, and they were all extremely shocked. God, Lin Shire was chased by 3 half-step kings. It seems that the news is true. The voodoo barbarian bastard is determined to kill Lin Shire this time. Come on, spread the news, and let all the practitioners in other areas of the Mulberry Forest know that Lin Shire is a talented young man who can't be killed by the voodoo barbarian bastard. After the initial shock, these practitioners all moved on their own. As Imperial practitioners, they didn't have to choose at all. They would choose to stand on Lin Sun's side. Now that they saw that he was killed, who could remain indifferent? On this day, a big news spread in all the major areas of the Mulberry Forest. Lin Sun, who was known as a talented young man, was chased by 3 half-step kings of the voodoo barbarians and was in a precarious situation. Suddenly, a great uproar was caused. Ha! The young devil is finally going to die. I knew he would be killed this time. Does he really think he could be invincible with a mysterious big bow? Ridiculous. How dare he? Now he is finally going to be wiped out. This is the result of offending the voodoo barbarian tribe. No matter how talented you are and how powerful your treasures are, you are doomed to be strangled. Many voodoo barbarians were excited and kept talking about it. The rumors about Lin Sun had already shocked and scared them. After all, it was too shocking that a young man in the Tao Insight realm could kill a half-step king. Now, knowing that Lin Sun was about to be killed, these voodoo barbarians secretly breathed a sigh of relief and gloated. This news also caused a great disturbance among the practitioners of the empire. Lin Sun was not only famous in the voodoo barbarian tribe, but also in the 8 camps of the empire. It was hard not to attract attention when knowing that he was in danger. Oh no, is Lin Shire really unable to escape this time? The situation is very bad. Being chased by 3 half-step kings, even a real half-step king would be in trouble, let alone a young man in the Tao Insight realm. Many practitioners of the empire were worried. What are you afraid of? Don't forget that Lin Shire killed a half-step king with 1 arrow in the last battle of Tiger Canyon. Since he dares to come to the Mulberry Forest alone, he must be well prepared. It is impossible for him to be killed so easily. Alas, anyway, hurry to find Lin Shire's whereabouts. We can't watch him being killed by voodoo barbarians. When hearing the news, Ing Ke, the young master of the Dark Barbarian tribe, immediately said, Lin Shire is doomed to die this time. You humans don't even have a chance to collect his body, let alone rescue him. Even if you send out your kings, it will be of no help." When these words came out, many practitioners of the empire became gloomy and realized that the situation was not good. Even some top bigwigs temporarily stopped looking for opportunities and began to pay attention to this matter. I believe that Lin Shire will be safe. At the same time, I will pay attention to this battle. If Lin Shire is killed, I will kill all the voodoo barbarians in the mulberry forest. Before long, General Xiahou Jie's murderous voice made the practitioners of the empire boil. "Haha, Xiahou Jie, your time of death is coming. How dare you talk nonsense here? Wash your neck and wait for me. I'm going to take your head off very soon." Soon, Flame King on the side of voodoo barbarians made a cold and disdainful threat, which also caused a great sensation. For a moment, the atmosphere in the mulberry forest changed. When all kinds of rumors were spreading, Lin Sun had been running away. Buzz! Before long, the insignificant longbow was fully drawn, and the sky arrow was ready. However, before Lin Sun shot out the arrow, the three half-step kings, including with Ling Feng, who had been chasing behind him, had been vigilant and avoided the arrow. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. He had to put away the insignificant longbow and continue to escape. This scene had happened many times. Since with Ling Feng was hurt, the three half-step kings had been on alert all the way, leaving no chance for Lin Sun to shoot the sky arrow. This made Lin Sun feel a little gloomy. There were few rare jade stones left in his hand. Although they had not caught up with him all the way, the constant consumption of physical strength would become a fatal problem. Fortunately, the night is coming. Lin Sun took a deep breath. While escaping, he could clearly perceive that the sky was getting dark. Damn little bastard. Why is he so fast? In the rear, with Ling Feng and the other half-step kings were more depressed than Lin Sun. They chased all the way but failed to catch up with Lin Sun, which made them almost cough up blood. They were half-step kings. Now, they couldn't even catch up with the young man in Tao Insight Realm, which was a great shame. If this news spread out, they would be ashamed to raise their heads. No, the night is coming. Suddenly, Kanglin Shue's beautiful face changed unpredictably. All of a sudden, with Ling Feng and Jin Duzhen's faces became gloomy. When the night came, the bloodthirsty battlefield would become 100 times more horrible than during the day, especially in the mysterious and dangerous mulberry woods. Even half-step kings like them could only lie low when the night came, and dared not to rush in recklessly. The night came quickly. The world was shrouded in an oppressive and frightening atmosphere, which made people's hair stand on end. It's okay. If he doesn't want to die in an accident, he won't dare to continue. Let's stop. I've locked onto his breath. Even if he hides, it's useless. Finally, with Ling Feng made the decision. The night made him feel uneasy all over, and he felt a kind of potential danger. That's the only way. Kanglin Shui and Jin Duzhen were reluctant, but they had to agree for safety. However, to their surprise, Lin Sun in front of them had no intention of stopping at all. In the vast night, he disappeared in a flash. This, with Ling Feng, was dumbfounded. Does this little bastard want to die? Obviously, he realized that the arrival of night would be his only chance to avoid our pursuit. Kanglin Shuen gnashed her teeth. What should we do? Should we chase him or not? Jin Duzhen hesitated, thinking about the pros and cons. Old bastards, why don't you chase him? Come and fight me if you dare. At this moment, Lin Sun's roar suddenly sounded in the distant night. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when the Jadefall arrow carried a terrifying and monstrous might as it rumbled and crushed through space as it shot over explosively. At this moment, with Ling Feng and Kanglin Shui were so angry that they almost jumped up. How dare this bastard provoke and fight back when he was at the end of the road? Chapter 727. Although they were enraged, the Wood Spirit Peak disciples were still frightened by the blue sky arrow, causing them to use all their strength to evade. Heaven small boom. Small near them, a bottomless pit had been dug open in the ground. Shattered rocks shot out and dust filled the air, causing their faces to be covered in dirt. Damn it, Wood Spirit Peak was so angry that their lungs almost exploded. They were the dignified half-step king tiers. When had they ever been so embarrassed? Old bastards, if you're not afraid of death, catch up. Lin Sun's provocative voice sounded in the distance. This almost drove Wood Spirit Peak crazy. Did he really think they wouldn't dare to kill him? Should we go after him? Jean Dujin's face was livid, and his eyes were steaming with terrible anger. This, Wood Spirit Peak, was a little hesitant. Under the cover of the night, they had come to the depths of the mulberry forest. Everything seemed unknown and dangerous. This guy is so provocative. If we don't take this opportunity to kill him, how can we face our clansmen? Sanglan Shui was also trembling with anger. Not only did she fail to catch up with Lin Sun, but she also destroyed her treasure, the bowl of overturned water. Now, she was provoked by Lin Sun again and again. How could she tolerate this? Suddenly, Wood Spirit Peak's face changed slightly. Oh no, there's a terrifying aura in the distance. It's approaching us. Almost at the same time, Jean Dujin and Sanglan Shui also noticed that the aura was not concealed. It soared into the sky in the night. It was terrifying and eerie, with a murderous aura. Obviously, Lin Sun's arrow was too loud and attracted the attention of a terrifying existence. The purpose of this brat's arrow just now. Could it be that he wants to borrow a knife to kill someone? Wood Spirit Peak and the others had the same thought at the same time. Go after him. Staying here is bound to be dangerous. It's better to go all out and kill that damn bastard. Wood Spirit Peak gritted his teeth and made a decision. Swish, swish, swish. Their figures flashed and continued to chase in the night. Although they were furious, they became extremely vigilant and careful. It couldn't be helped. The mulberry forest at night was too terrifying. Not long after they left, a blood-colored moth flapped its wings and floated over the area. Its entire body seemed as if it was carved from the purest blood-colored jade, and it was only the size of a palm. It was scarlet red and beautiful, and it was coiled with a bloody glow. Its bearing was light and agile, but when it flapped its wings, the nearby space would imperceptibly collapse and sink as if it was swallowed by a black hole. The terrifying, baleful aura that soared into the heavens came from his body. Although its figure was small, its aura was not simple at all. It floated there like a ruler of the world, looking down on everything in the world. By Luo, it murmured softly, so it wasn't destroyed. It's a pity that its aura is too weak. Back then, it could even kill. Looks like it should have suffered some sort of heavy injury, or perhaps its power has already been worn away by the passage of time. Finally, after a moment of silence, it flapped its wings and chased after Lin Sun and the others. Lin Sun, who was running away, felt an inexplicable uneasiness in his heart. He stopped immediately and found that he had broken into a strange area. It was too quiet here. The bloody mist was steaming, and the night was shrouded in darkness. It was so quiet that there was not even a trace of wind. In other areas, all kinds of earth-shaking roars came from afar, like the roars of gods and demons, and also like the roars of fierce beasts, which made people scalp numb. But only in this area, there was no sound at all, which seemed very abnormal. Lin Sun suddenly became unprecedentedly vigilant. His scalp was a little numb, and he realized that there must be some unknown great horror hidden in this area. When Lin Sun was hesitating whether to continue moving forward, he faintly heard a sound of breaking through the air in the area behind him. These old beasts have really caught up with us? Lin Sun was a little surprised. His previous provocation was originally a kind of test to see whether those half-step kings really dared to continue to act in the night. Unexpectedly, they really caught up with him. Then let's have a fight to see which of us has a tougher life. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and rushed to the deeper part of this strange area, regardless of anything else. He already had a plan in mind, and he was ready to go all out. If he really encountered a great danger, the worst result was nothing more than a mutual destruction, and everyone would be killed. At least it was better than dying in the hands of the enemy and letting the enemy leave alive. Swish! Lin Sun moved extremely fast in the bloody mist. However, The uneasiness in his heart was getting stronger and stronger, and he was even a little frightened and cold. In this strange and silent area, there seemed to be a pair of invisible eyes watching him all the time, which made Lin Sun's heart show a sign of collapse. This was an unprecedented horror, more terrifying than facing a life-death realm king. But Lin Sun had no time to care about this. What? Suddenly, in Lin Sun's vision, there was a touch of ice and snow crystal light, which was flashing in the bloody mist in the distance, with an indescribable sense of sacredness. This is... Lin Sun approached carefully and immediately saw an unforgettable picture. In the bloody mist, a big tree, which seemed to be carved out of ice and snow, stood there. Its leaves were like cattail leaf fans, glittering like ice and snow, luxuriant and vigorous, with holy light falling down. The stem of the big tree was even more amazing. Its old skin was cracked like dragon scales, and it was also crystal clear, reaching straight to the sky. Its height was immeasurable. A big tree, sacred and brilliant, as pure as ice and snow, stood there with a kind of majestic and solemn atmosphere that made people want to worship it. Thousands of snow-white divine light fell from its branches, like a waterfall of light rain, flowing and dancing, which was particularly eye-catching and shocking in the night filled with bloody mist. Lin Sun was stunned. He felt a kind of incomparable sacred vitality spreading from the ancient ice and snow tree. Under the influence of the vast and mighty breath, Lin Sun's chi also boiled and became unprecedentedly lively. At that moment, Lin Sun had a feeling of enlightenment and ascension. This, Lin Sun was shocked. Could it be a legendary holy tree? But at the same time, Lin Sun felt more and more uneasy. His hair stood on end, and the fatal breath of danger was beating every inch of his skin like a tide, making him almost want to leave this place. The strangeness and silence of this place are related to this tree. Lin Sun made a judgment. He thought for a moment, and finally, he gritted his teeth and approached step by step. When he was only 30 meters away from the holy ice tree, he almost couldn't bear the terrible breath. In the end, he utilized the Bayan Chi to conceal himself. Even though this place was extremely dangerous, it was also capable of deterring the Wood Spirit Peak's members. Lin Sun wanted to see if they dare to fight here. Something's wrong. There's a great danger here. Soon, the figures of Wood Spiritual Peak and the others appeared in the vicinity of this strange area. In an instant, their faces changed. As a half-step king, they could sense more danger and realized that there was a danger in this area that could threaten their lives. Should we go after them? Jean Dujin swallowed his saliva with difficulty, feeling a little cold. There was a breath in this area that made him feel suffocated. If this guy dares to go in, why can't we? Moreover, from the breath he left behind, he obviously hasn't been killed. We've already chased him here. If we go back now, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? Kanglin Shui said, gritting her teeth. Although she said that, she was actually a little uneasy. Then go after them. Wood Spiritual Peak gritted his teeth. But if there's a trace of something wrong, we'll leave immediately. We can't hesitate. Jean Dujin and Kanglin Shui nodded. This was undoubtedly the safest way. Not long after they advanced in fear, the Wood Spirit Peaks group also discovered the snow-white sacred tree. Their eyes immediately widened as they stood there in shock. The breath of the divine path. This ancient tree has the breath of the divine path. Could it be that the rumors are true? Wood Spiritual Peak and the others were so excited that they almost shouted. Legend has it that in the original mulberry forest, there was a great secret to becoming a sage. A mulberry tree obtained this secret by chance and finally became a sage, commanding the heavens. Jean Dujin murmured, his expression full of desire. Originally, I thought the rumors were exaggerated, but now it seems that they are all true. Look, there's an ice flower at the top of the holy tree, and on the flower bud, there's a fruit. It's so bright, like an icy sun. Kanglin Shui realized something and exclaimed in excitement. That can't be a sage fruit, right? Wood Spiritual Peak and Jean Dujin looked over, And indeed, on the top of the holy tree, there was an ice flower the size of a millstone. The petals were crystal clear, and they were in full bloom, emitting a myriad of divine lights. And on top of the ice flower, there was a fruit. Although it was only the size of a fist, it was so bright that one couldn't look at it directly, like a small, icy sun, extremely dazzling. This is the great creation that our king is looking for. I didn't expect that under a strange combination of circumstances, we found it first. Wood Spiritual Peak took a deep breath and said, at this moment, he even forgot to chase after Lin's son. The opportunity in front of him was so amazing and tempting that his mind was firmly attracted. You protect me. I'm willing to take a risk for this opportunity. Finally, Wood Spiritual Peak gritted his teeth and decided to pick the mysterious fruit hanging on the top of the holy tree. Okay. Jean Dujin and Kanglin Shui also decided to fight. Even if they felt great uneasiness and danger at the moment, they would not hesitate to risk it for this opportunity. Wealth was sought in danger, not to mention such an unparalleled opportunity. It was enough for them to fight for it at all costs. At this time, Lin's son, who was hiding not far away, was speechless. He was the first to come here, but because of shock and vigilance, he didn't find that there was such a great opportunity hidden on the top of the holy tree. What should he do? Should he just watch this great opportunity being taken away by them? Lin's son was a little unwilling, but soon he calmed down. If it was so easy to get such an opportunity, it would have been taken away long ago. How could it survive until now? There must be a mystery in it. Could it be that Wood Spirit Peak and the others couldn't see this? Obviously not. Chapter 728. Boom! Wood Spirit Foam began to move. At this moment, he was extremely careful and calm. He circulated his strength to the limit and even took out his trump card. Heavenly Sound Novel there was a beast bone necklace, a mysterious inner armor, a cloak with totem barbarian markings, and an ancient green spear in his hand. He seemed to be armed to the teeth. His entire body shone with dazzling light. Even Lin's son, who was in the dark, was stunned. Only now did he realize that a half-step king's foundation was indeed extraordinary. At the same time, Jean Dujin and Kanglin Shui were also on guard. They took out their secret treasures and guarded Wood Spirit Foam. Everything was ready. Wood Spirit Foam suddenly raised his head. His eyes instantly locked onto the peak of the holy tree. Then, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. Rumble, his aura skyrocketed and climbed to the peak in an instant. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He was very clear that if he were to face this old guy head-on, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand a single move. Swoosh! He stepped on the void and ascended. His speed was not fast, and he seemed very vigilant and careful. Soon, he was close to the peak of the holy tree. At this moment, even Wood Spirit Foam felt his mouth go dry and his heart beat violently. If he could seize this unparalleled opportunity, then would he be able to step into the true king realm? Calm down. Calm down. At this moment, Wood Spirit Foam displayed the calmness of a half-step king. He was completely alert and careful. Close. He could even clearly see that mysterious picture scrolls appeared around the crystal fruit. There was an ancient and boundless sound of the Tao drifting in the air. It was sacred and boundless. A rain of light swirled around. A clear and holy fragrance that seeped into the depths of his bones drifted in the air. It made Wood Spirit Foam feel so comfortable that his soul almost left his body. Wood Spirit Foam finally couldn't bear it anymore. He moved as fast as lightning and grabbed towards the fruit. But almost at the same time, a cicada's cry suddenly rang out. It was faint like the strings of a zither. It was indescribably clear and ethereal. But when it fell into Wood Spirit Fang's ears, his soul was instantly imprisoned. His blood froze, and a terrifying, tearing force spread out from his body. This! Wood Lingfang's pupils dilated, and within his field of vision, he saw a snow-white cicada. It was only the size of an infant's palm, and it was quietly lying on the snow flower below the fruit. Its eyes were cold and indifferent, and carried a trace of deep disdain. It was as if a god in the sky was looking down on ants on the ground. White cicada, it's. Would Spirit Peak's face instantly turn deathly pale as he recalled a widely circulated legend in the mulberry forest. There was once a practitioner who swore that he saw a white cicada in the depths of the mulberry forest. The cicada was as big as a baby's palm, and its body was surrounded by the light of ascension. With a soft chirp, it destroyed everything within 100 miles. The Empire's General Xiahou Jie deduced that if the rumors were true, then it was highly likely that this white cicada had already stepped into the divine path. As soon as he thought of this, the wood spirit peak indeed appeared. The white cicada's body was surrounded by a dense and dreamlike rain of light, like the glow of an ascended immortal. Then, he completely lost consciousness and consciousness. Below the holy tree, Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui, who had been constantly on guard, couldn't help but clench their fists tightly when they saw Wood Spirit Peak approaching the holy fruit. Their hearts were filled with excitement and anticipation. However, they quickly noticed that something was wrong. Wood Spirit Peak had clearly made his move, but his movements were stiff as if he was imprisoned. He maintained an extremely strange posture and didn't move at all. Could it be that he's met with misfortune? Both of them were shocked, but what puzzled them was that from the beginning until the end, they didn't sense any killing intent or danger approaching. Pooh! 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 Then, their pupils suddenly dilated. In their field of vision, the motionless Wood Spirit Peak's body suddenly collapsed soundlessly, transforming into countless pieces of flesh and blood that rained down. From the beginning until the end, not a single sound was made. There wasn't even a shrill cry or a sound of begging for mercy. Silently, a half-step king had exploded into pieces of flesh and blood. Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui were so shocked that their souls almost left their bodies. They felt as if they had fallen into an icy pit, and they almost cried out involuntarily. How could this be? This scene was too strange and terrifying, causing the two of them to instinctively choose to flee at the first possible moment. At this moment, even if the secret of immortality was right in front of them, they would never look back, not to mention the unparalleled opportunity. It was too terrible. At this time, Lin Sun also had a layer of goosebumps all over his body, and his heart was in turmoil. He had already seen the power of Wood Spirit Peak, but now he had died soundlessly. This was a half-step king who had long stood among the top powerhouses in the world. How could he just die like this? This made Lin Sun have an impulse to turn around and run away. This ice-holy tree was tempting, but the killing intent hidden in it was also boundlessly horrifying. Then, a scene that made Lin Sun's heart even more chilled appeared. Not far away, Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui, who were fleeing, actually collapsed inch by inch in the process of escaping, turning into flesh and blood that rained down along the way. Lin Sun was so shocked that he couldn't speak. This was the first time he had seen such a way of death. It was too horrifying. From the beginning to the end, he didn't know who did it. Originally, Lin Sun should have been glad and happy to see Wood Spirit Peak and the others die together. But at this moment, he couldn't feel happy at all. At present, he was hiding beside the ice-holy tree. Although he had concealed his breath with miasma chi, he knew clearly that from the moment he appeared here, he had already been targeted. Clatter, suddenly, a strange phenomenon sounded in the distant area, which seemed very harsh in this deathly silent atmosphere. A blood-colored moth suddenly appeared. Its tiny body seemed to be carved out of the most perfect blood jade in the world. It was bright red and sacred. It was light and agile, and when it flapped its wings, the void silently collapsed and sank like a black hole. Its breath soared to the sky, like a ruler descending to the world. It made Lin Sun's eyes sting, and his heart trembled. His face changed dramatically again. This breath was even more terrible than that of a life-death realm king. Lin Sun suddenly thought of the old ape who had stepped into the divine path in the demon saint's secret realm. There was no doubt that this blood-red moth was also a terrible existence at the same level. Whoosh! However, before he could react, Lin Sun noticed that an indifferent and cold gaze fell on him. At that moment, it was like a sharp knife to his throat. But soon this gaze disappeared. Then Lin Sun, who had been in a cold sweat, saw a white cicada in his field of vision. It flew from the top of the holy tree. Its body was as holy as ice and snow, sprinkling a rain of light like a dream. In a flash, it had come to the void in the distance. Immediately, the cicada's cries sounded, faint like the sound of a zither, ethereal and clear, stirring the 9 heavens and 10 earths. A holy aura suddenly appeared on the white cicada's body. It shot into the sky, causing the space in the area to rumble and violently ripple. "You've crossed the boundary," the white cicada said in a cold voice. "The catastrophe of the Tao hasn't come yet. And you want to take action? I learned the Tao in ancient times and awakened in the present. I can't remember many things, but I can't forget some things about my old friends." In the distance, the blood-red moth fluttered, shining brightly. In terms of momentum, it was not weaker than the white cicada. These were 2 terrifying divine creatures. Lin Sun took a deep breath and roughly guessed that perhaps it was because of the appearance of the blood-colored moth that the white cicada had no time to deal with him, so he was lucky to escape. Otherwise, he would probably suffer the exact same fate as those 3 from the Wood Spirit Peak. No matter what, crossing the boundary is a form of provocation. The white cicada's voice was ice-cold, and it had a unique rhythm to it. It was like the sound of the Tao was reverberating, and the world was filled with a divine and boundless aura. "Oh, in that case, why don't we fight?" The blood-color moth seemed to be too lazy to explain. Its voice was light, and it seemed to be free and conceited. "As you wish." Boom! The white cicada rushed up and suddenly arrived above the 9th heaven. At the same time, the blood-red mothet flapped its wings and charged into the sky like a scarlet storm. "You dare to stop me from killing this kid?" Suddenly, the white cicada's voice became even colder, as if it had been infuriated. Lin Sun was stunned, and then he realized that the white cicada was about to kill him just now, but for some reason, it was blocked by the bloody moth. "What's wrong? Are you exasperated?" The bloody moth let out a faint laugh. Boom! Above the sky, the battle broke out. The divine saber light seemed to explode the night sky, and the sky was full of shocking and terrible scenes. At this moment, the strong practitioners in various areas of the mulberry forest, whether they were imperial practitioners or voodoo barbarians, no matter their cultivation level, all felt fear at the same time. They all looked up at the night sky. There were 2 sacred and boundless auras colliding. They were bright and blazing, illuminating the sky and tearing the night sky apart. Vaguely, there were visions of the Great Way collapsing and the gods and demons weeping blood. Saint Confrontation. General Xiahou Jia, Xie Xian, Voodoo Barbarian Yin Xiong King, Thunder Heaven King, and Gold Pearl King were all frightened. Saint Tao. How many years had it been since such a level of power appeared in the world? Now, it reappeared in the mulberry forest, which was too amazing. If it was spread out, it was bound to cause a shock in the world. In front of the ice and snow tree, Lin Sun narrowly escaped death. His clothes were soaked in cold sweat, and he still had a lingering fear. Tonight was too dangerous. It was like walking through the gate of hell. Run! Without any hesitation, Lin Sun wanted to leave immediately. If he didn't take this opportunity to escape, he would really be in trouble if the white cicada returned. As for the fruit on the ice-snow holy tree, Lin Sun didn't dare to covet it at all. He was even sure that if he dared to approach it rashly, the white cicada in the middle of battle would absolutely kill him at all costs. "Friend, since you are here, why leave? The battle is about to start, and it's impossible to tell the outcome in a short time. I just woke up from the endless silence, and you came here to take refuge by accident. It can be said that we are destined to meet. Why don't we take this opportunity to have a chat?" But just as Lin Sun was about to leave, a clear and gentle voice came from the ice and snow tree, inviting Lin Sun with kindness. Chapter 729. Lin Sun felt strange, and his hair stood on end. "God, Novel, it was incredible that a guy with unknown origin sitting on the mysterious holy tree invited Lin Sun and said he was destined to meet him. Alas, the years are long and lonely. It's not easy to meet you. Why do you want to leave? I just want to have a chat with you. The clear and gentle voice sighed with emotion. Then, Lin Sun was horrified to find that an invisible force enveloped him and took him to the holy tree in an instant. An ice flower bloomed, and thousands of divine lights fell like a dream. Lin Sun helplessly watched himself sitting on the crystal-clear trunk beside the ice flower. From beginning to end, he couldn't control or resist. "My friend, you are forcing me. How can this be called fate?" Lin Sun swallowed hard. His scalp was numb. The only thing he felt lucky was that he didn't sense any danger at the moment. In fact, sitting on the holy tree, his body was bathed in strands of holy, icy light, making him feel lazy and comfortable. Fate is like an illusion. It's empty. It's fine to just follow one's heart's desires. If one is blindly obsessed, then one will instead fall into a disadvantageous position and clash with my Tao. When the clear and gentle voice sounded, Lin Sun saw a futon made of ice jade in a blooming ice flower next to him. A golden cicada was lying on it in a serene and calm manner. The golden cicada was only the size of a baby's palm. Its whole body was glowing with soft golden light. Its eyes were clear and translucent, as if they could reflect the secrets of people's hearts. It was very holy and radiated a light of wisdom. It was just a cicada, but it gave Lin Sun a sense of solemnity and freedom. All of a sudden, Lin Sun's eyes widened. He never expected that there was a golden cicada on the holy tree besides a white cicada. Could it be? Was this also a horrible creature that had stepped into the divine Tao? Lin Sun's heart trembled. Is the divine Tao terrible? I don't think so. It's just a door on the road of Tao. You can't see through the mystery outside the door, so you are afraid. When you push the door open one day, you will find that it's just SOSO. Suddenly, the golden cicada spoke again, as if it had seen through Lin Sun's thoughts. Its voice had a calming power. Just SOSO. Lin Sun had a ridiculous feeling. Since ancient times, countless practitioners had no chance to set foot in the divine path and could only look up to it. However, when it came from the mouth of the golden cicada, it seemed to be very casual and ordinary. "Yes, that's all." Golden cicada said, "I've had a vision since a long time ago. One day, all living beings in this world will be able to become saints, and all of them will be free from the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death." Lin Sun was shocked. How arrogant this guy was. All living things can become saints. Since ancient times, who would dare to lie like this? Did I scare you? It doesn't matter. Whether I believe it or not is ultimately my business. Golden cicada appeared very gentle. Lin Sun calmed down a little and asked, "Really just a chat?" "Yes, chatting." Golden cicada said, "Do you know that before the primordial age, when the living beings of the world began to awaken their roots of wisdom and first came to know the world, what were they doing?" "Do what?" Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. He had never thought of such a question before. "Chatting." Golden cicada gave an answer that almost made Lin Sun speechless. But soon, Golden cicada gave an elaboration and explanation. Chatting is naturally about the heaven. At that time, the world was like the beginning of chaos, and everything showed an ancient and primitive appearance. The existence of the heaven was like the incarnation of the Great Way, high and untouchable, far and unreachable. If you want to embark on the road of cultivation, you must understand and explore it. At that time, the first thing practitioners did when they got together was to chat, talk about their knowledge and perception of the heaven, and exchange their experiences with each other. So, after a long time, the road of cultivation was explored step by step. It turns out to be this kind of chat. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Hearing the description of chat, he felt refreshed. When you set foot on the divine path, you should learn to chat. Golden cicada suddenly said, "But at that time, the object of your chat is all living beings, imparting knowledge or educating. It's all about the divine path you pursue. Is it so particular to become a divine path?" Lin Sun was surprised and unconsciously attracted. Even the life-death realm couldn't see through the mystery of the divine path, because this realm was too lofty. It was said that one could live as long as the ages and shine as the sun and the moon. It was extremely incredible. Now, it was undoubtedly a rare learning opportunity for Lin Sun to learn something about the divine path from the mouth of this mysterious golden cicada. It's not difficult to become a divine path, but it's not easy either. There are great mysteries hidden in it. You only need to know that there are many so-called saints in the world, but they are just superficial. They still follow the old path of the past, and their achievements are doomed to be limited. At best, they are pseudo-saints. A true saint must carve out an unprecedented path of the Tao on his own. Golden Cicada's words made Lin Sun shudder. Was there a difference between true and false Tao in the divine path? The saint without saint is the true saint, and the Tao without Tao is the great way. It's better to forget about things and myself. Golden Cicada suddenly murmured as if it remembered something. Lin Sun was also stunned. The divine path was too far away for him. Even though he had heard some secrets about the divine path, it didn't affect him much. At the moment, Lin Sun just thought that today's chat was really special, even absurd and bizarre. In the vast and dangerous mulberry forest, blood mist pervaded the air. In the sky, two horrible creatures who had stepped into the divine path were fighting fiercely. It was earth-shattering. On the ground, he was sitting on the top of the ice and snow holy tree, chatting with a golden cicada lying on an ice cushion. The atmosphere was really weird. By the way, there was also the holy fruit close at hand. Lin Sun suddenly realized that the holy fruit, which was as bright as the ice and snow sun, was not far from his head. It was only the size of a fist, as if it was carved out of white ice and snow. It was filled with bright and unparalleled holy light, and thousands of dreamy divine lights fell from it. The fragrance was clear and cold, and it seemed to be able to penetrate into the depths of the soul, making people feel as if they were walking on clouds. Numerous mysterious phenomena were faintly flickering in the surroundings of the fruit, and they were faintly visible while strands of the tune of the Tao that seemed like the sound of nature reverberated through the surroundings. In a trance, Lin Sun felt that his whole body was bathed in the warm light of Tao. His mind was empty, and there was no more thought. Whoosh, the qi, blood, spiritual power, and spirit in his body started to circulate on their own, lively and smooth. The cave in his body rumbled, and divine light gushed out. At this moment, Lin Sun forgot everything. He forgot the matchless battle in the sky, forgot the mysterious golden cicada beside him, and forgot to be vigilant and on guard. He was in a very strange state at the moment. It was as if he was comprehending the great Tao, but also as if he had entered a trance state without any thoughts. His mind was empty both inside and outside. Unknowingly, the battle in the night sky came to an end, and peace was restored. Even so, the experts hiding in various areas of the mulberry forest still had a lingering fear. This battle of the divine path was too terrifying, and even the life and death kings were terrified. Who won and who lost? No one knew. Who were the two saints fighting? Similarly, no one could see clearly. It was precisely because of this that this battle caused this boundless mulberry forest to seem even more mysterious and dangerous. Why don't you kill him? White Cicada appeared on the holy ice tree and saw Lin Sun sitting in the holy glory. A killing intent flashed through its eyes. Golden Cicada looked at Lin Sun with his clear eyes and said leisurely, "It's my fate to meet such an interesting young man when I finally wake up. I have no killing intent in my heart. How can I take his life?" "Interesting?" White Cicada said disdainfully. "He is just a young man of Tao Insight Realm. Since ancient times, he is not the only one who has embarked on the path of Tao. Although the insignificant bow and the blue sky arrow were obtained by this young man, these two treasures have long lost their original power. Is this interesting? You don't understand?" Golden Cicada shook its head. "What you see is just the surface. There is something more interesting about him." "Oh, why don't I kill him, break open his body, and find out the truth?" The white cicada sneered. Golden Cicada said unhurriedly, "If you do that, then I will use this sacred origin fruit to reconstruct his body." "How dare you?" White Cicada's voice suddenly became cold. "Do you think there's anything in this world that I dare not do? Don't forget, the reason why I chose to remain silent back then was because I wanted to wait for an opportunity to prove a thought in my heart. As for this Saint Yuan fruit, it is merely something that I can do without. Only you would care so much about it." Golden Cicada's voice was still gentle and calm, but White Cicada was silent for a long time, and then said, "What on earth do you want to do? I want to see what the holy path of this young man is." Golden Cicada answered casually, "It's like planting a seed. I just want to see what kind of flower it will bear." "In the end, you still believe in the so-called hope. Let me tell you, there is no such thing as the Tao you imagined in this world." White Cicada laughed coldly. "If you don't believe it, wait and see." "Then wait and see." Golden Cicada was as quiet as ever. When the night faded, Lin Sun woke up. He was stunned at first, and then he was shocked. The holy ice tree was gone. At this moment, he was sitting on a stone, surrounded by blood mist, as if everything he experienced last night was just a dream. Lin Sun suddenly got up and glanced around. Indeed, it was gone. Even the golden cicada had disappeared, as if it had never existed. No, this is not a dream. Lin Sun soon found that his whole body seemed to have been reborn. Every inch of his skin was full of a magnificent vitality, and the spiritual energy in his body was like a boiling ocean, strong and abundant. The rich power dyed the internal cave with a layer of sacred atmosphere, and his cultivation had reached the mastery of the Tao insight realm. Chapter 730. It must be the effect of that holy fruit. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun made a judgment, which shocked him. Sounds of nature novels last night. He only sat there quietly and bathed in the divine brilliance emitted by the holy fruit, but allowed his cultivation to reach the consummation of the Tao insight realm overnight. This was too shocking. If I were to consume that holy fruit, what kind of miraculous effect would it have? Soon, Lin Sun took a deep breath and stopped thinking about it. Everything that happened last night seemed absurd and unreal, like a dream, but after all, it helped him avoid a disaster. Wood Spiritual Peak was dead. Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui were also dead, and he had profited from the disaster. Not only did he hear some secrets about the divine Tao, but his cultivation had also undergone a transformation due to a freak combination of factors. What is the origin of the golden cicada? Why does it hibernate in the mulberry forest? And the blood-colored moth and the white cicada are also in the divine realm. Why do they also hibernate here? Lin Sun didn't know, but he was sure that maybe when a certain time came, these dormant divine path creatures would inevitably come out. Not long after, Lin Sun's figure flickered and left the area. Along the way, as before, he carefully searched the area along the way, hoping to dig up more strange jade stones. As for the rare opportunity, he had completely forgotten about it. In this mulberry forest, there were not only kings, but also horrible divine path creatures. Even if there was a great opportunity, it was not something he could think about at all. Damn voodoo barbarian bastards. They are getting more and more arrogant. Do they really think they have the upper hand in the mulberry forest? Alas, the situation of our imperial practitioners is not very optimistic. Fortunately, we escaped quickly this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid we will be caught as cannon fodder and forced to work for those voodoo barbarian bastards to dig up treasures. Damn it, if there are more ruthless people like Lin Shi in our imperial practitioners, we won't be so aggrieved. Suddenly, a cursing voice came from the bloody mist in the distance, which attracted Lin Sun's attention. Guys, what happened in front of us? Lin Sun approached and saw 5 or 6 practitioners of the Empire running away with a sullen, angry, and unwilling look. He couldn't help asking, what else can it be? The brilliance of treasures is spreading out from a natural cave up ahead, but it has been occupied by the scumbags of the sorcerer barbarians. Also, they are capturing the practitioners of the Imperium as cannon fodder to explore and excavate treasures for them. This is outrageous, a middle-aged man said indignantly. Young man, hurry up and run away. Don't get close to that place. It has been controlled by the voodoo barbarian bastards, and there is even a half-step king warrior among them. You will die if you go there. Other practitioners also warned Lin's son. Oh, I see. Thank you. Lin's son nodded and flashed away. He had been chased by people of Wood Spirit Peak and was almost killed. His heart had been full of anger for a long time. At this time, hearing such a thing, Lin's son suddenly found a way to vent his anger. He actually didn't listen to my advice? Aren't you afraid of death? Those practitioners were all stunned. The direction Lin's son was heading towards was the area they had escaped from before. No, didn't you notice that the young man seems to be very similar to the legendary Lin? Sure. Someone seemed to realize something, and his eyes suddenly lit up. What? He is not dead? Gosh, this is big news. He was chased by 3 half-step king warriors and still survived. He is so powerful. Those practitioners were all in an uproar and excited. When they thought about it carefully, they felt that the young man they just saw was Lin Sure, because the young man was holding an extremely rough and ferocious white bone bow, which had long become the unique symbol of Lin Sure and left a deep impression on them. Should we follow him and have a look? Someone suggested, which immediately made the other practitioners excited. Let's go. Immediately, someone took the lead and went back the way they came. The other practitioners hurried to follow. The area ahead was filled with a strong and pungent smell of blood. There were broken bodies on the ground, all of which belonged to the practitioners of the Imperium. It was a shocking scene. A mighty old man who looked like he was made of stone stood there. His eyes were cold and murderous, and he was monitoring this area. He came from the Earth Barbarian branch, and his name was Tung Hai. He had killed many practitioners of the Imperium and captured some of them. At this time, he was driving these practitioners of the Imperium to help him dig a natural cave nearby. There was treasure light in it, but also unpredictable killing intent. Nearby, some strong voodoo barbarians were watching. What? Another fish fell into the net. Tung Hai's lips curled up. Little guy, you are brave. You still dare to approach after seeing this scene. The strong voodoo barbarians nearby also laughed with a playful look. Did you kill all the people on the ground? Lin Sun's eyes swept over the broken bodies on the ground, and he looked very calm. Many enslaved practitioners of the Imperium nearby were alarmed and looked over. What are you looking at? Do you want to die? Keep digging. Tung Hai shouted coldly, and his killing intent lingered. Those practitioners of the Imperium looked pale and blue. Finally, they could only swallow their grievances, lower their heads, and continue to dig near the underground cave. Little guy, I killed them, so what? Don't just stand there. If you don't want to die, get over here and work with them. Tung Hai showed a scornful look. Gee, something's wrong. Elder, this boy seems to be. A strong voodoo barbarian next to Tung Hai seemed to find something. His face suddenly changed, and he reminded Tung Hai in a low voice. Bang! Before he finished, Lin Sun had already pulled the insignificance bow to the fullest, and the arrow of blue sky burst out. With a loud explosion and various strange phenomena, the horrible breath of destruction instantly shrouded the whole area. It's him. Tung Hai's eyes almost popped out. He recognized Lin Sun, and his face suddenly became uneasy. Then he roared and rushed to the sky. As a half-step king, Tung Hai's reaction was not slow. But after all, he was caught off guard, and it was too late for him to dodge. Puff! In the distance, those practitioners who had met Lin Sun before had arrived. They happened to see a black arrow rushing to the sky and penetrating Tung Hai's body, bringing a string of scarlet blood. Like firecrackers flying in the air, a bloody firework exploded in the void, which was sad, beautiful, and frightening. A half-step king died in front of them. The shock made all the people present speechless. The power of one arrow was as terrible as the rumor said. Those imperial practitioners all thought of the same name, Lin Sure, only he had such a heaven-defying archery. As for those strong voodoo barbarians in the field, they were completely scared. How could they expect that a teenager suddenly appeared and killed their half-step king with one arrow. It was too fast. This kind of battle of life and death decided by one arrow was so shocking that the minds of those strong voodoo barbarians went blank. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun pulled out the broken sword without hesitation and began to kill. Screams rang out, waking up the Imperial practitioners who were still in shock. As if awakened from a dream, they shouted and rushed forward to fight side by side with Lin Sun. Kill! Kill these F***king voodoo barbarian bastards. These Imperial practitioners have been captured and enslaved, so they were about to go crazy. Now, they vented their anger on these strong voodoo barbarians. In just a moment, more than a dozen strong voodoo barbarians in the field were slaughtered, and their blood sprinkled on the spot. All the Imperial practitioners were very excited. They came forward to thank Lin Sun with undisguised admiration and respect in their eyes. Lin Shi of the Empire deserved his reputation. More importantly, they were saved by Lin Shi today and witnessed the power of him killing a half-step king with one arrow. Lin Sun couldn't bear the enthusiasm of these people. He told them to hurry up and clean up the trophies, and then he came to the natural cave. The cave was only 3 feet wide and led to the underground. It looked like a beast cave, but inside it was glittering and filled with green brilliance. There was no doubt that there must be some treasures hidden in the depths. But at the same time, Lin Sun also noticed that there was a dangerous breath in the cave. It was so cold that Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. What's inside? Lin Sun called a practitioner and asked. The practitioner hurriedly said, I don't know. But according to the analysis of the half-step king, a voodoo barbarian tribe, the treasure inside contains extremely amazing vitality. Maybe it's a peerless medicine that has just awakened from silence. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Peerless medicine? But why did he always have a feeling of horror? When he looked down the cave, he seemed to be looking at an eye. Lin Sun took a deep breath and ordered, You leave here first, and I'll have a try. Remember, the farther you go, the better. Hearing this, the practitioners of the Empire were all awestruck. They didn't dare to neglect and avoided the area in the distance. Lin Sun picked up the broken sword, gritted his teeth, and was about to cut the cave with all his strength. Suddenly, a green light rushed up. At that instant, Lin Sun clearly saw a pair of eyes open in the depths of the cave. It was icy cold, indifferent, and flowed with a terrifying jade green glow. Its pupils were deep like the universe, and it revealed the terrifying phenomena of the sun and moon intersecting, the passage of time, and so on and so forth. Whoosh! Lin Sun felt uneasy and dared not to hesitate. He exerted Ice Drake's steps with all his strength and disappeared in an instant, until he fled nearly 50 kilometers away. Lin Sun's heart was still beating violently, and he still had a lingering fear. It was so terrible. That must be a horrible creature lying dormant under the earth, and it was very likely that it set foot on the divine path like the bloody moth, white cicada, and golden cicada. Shit, peerless medicine. Lin Sun scolded in his heart and was covered with cold sweat. The mulberry forest was so strange that unpredictable killing intent was hidden everywhere. Before long, those Imperial practitioners also arrived. Seeing that Lin Sun was fine, they all breathed a sigh of relief. They had also felt the incomparably terrifying aura before, which made them tremble with fear even though they were far away from each other. Next, these practitioners distributed more than half of the spoils to Lin Sun, including many exotic jades, other rare spiritual materials, and 5th-grade ones. Lin Sun was in need of exotic jades now, so he naturally wouldn't refuse them. This even made Lin Sun have an idea. Chapter 731. Before leaving, these practitioners of the Empire told Lin Sun that there were many bad rumors about him in recent days, which made almost all the practitioners of the Empire worried about him. Sounds of nature's small voodoo barbarians, on the other hand, swore that Lin Sun was doomed to die as he was chased by 3 half-step king practitioners. In fact, it was true. From yesterday to now, Lin Sun's life and death had affected the hearts of every practitioner of the Empire. As there was no news about Lin Sun for a long time, the The practitioners of the empire became more and more worried. Under such circumstances, the voodoo barbarians were extremely active. What Lin Sure? When his head falls to the ground, it will be in vain. Many strong voodoo barbarians said. What was most shocking was that K, the young master of the royal family of the Dark Barbarians, gathered many strong voodoo barbarians and secretly added fuel to the fire by declaring everywhere that Lin's son had been killed. He used this despicable means to undermine the morale of the practitioners of the empire. Although this means was a little shameless, it was very effective. It made the practitioners of the empire angry and sad, and their morale was dampened. That is to say, now both the voodoo barbarians and the empire think I am dead. Lin Sun's black eyes were surging with inexplicable luster. Those practitioners nodded. K, thinking of this person, Lin Sun thought of Lu when who betrayed the empire. With a flash of killing intent in his heart, he said, "Can you do me a favor?" "Child Lin, go ahead." Those practitioners said one after another. "Spread the news for me." In one word, let those half-step king practitioners among the voodoo barbarians wash their necks and wait for me. Yes. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as their hearts trembled. In an area of the mulberry forest. I haven't heard from Lin Sure for a day. He must be dead. It's really a pity. I wanted to learn the mystery of the peerless Tao from him, but now I have to give up. K sighed. Immediately, he smiled and said, "But it doesn't matter. There are immeasurable opportunities hidden everywhere in the mulberry forest. As long as I explore slowly, I will find such opportunities sooner or later." Speaking of this, he suddenly stood up with his bright eyes and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, the influence of Lin Sure's death is absolutely beyond our imagination. He is not only a young talent who set foot on the peerless Tao, but also a spiritual tattooist of the human empire. His death is fated to be a heavy blow to the Xioja of the empire." Voodoo barbarians nearby all nodded in agreement. Since the rise of Lin Sure in the bloodthirsty battlefield, he had killed a half-step king warrior and many top figures of the spirit awakening realm, which caused a sensation and even cast a shadow over the entire voodoo barbarian camp, making them frightened and frightened. This person had become an extremely dazzling new star in the Empire's camp. He was like a heaven-defying monster, and his name resounded throughout the bloodthirsty battlefield. If such a young man who was in the limelight were to die, it would be an unbearable loss to the Empire. "What does young master plan to do?" Lu Wen hurriedly asked, appearing very enthusiastic. His flattery made the nearby voodoo barbarians disgusted and felt this guy was too shameless. But Lu Wen didn't care. He only knew that if he wanted to stand firm in the voodoo barbarian camp in the future, he must flatter K, the young master of the dark barbarian royal family. Continue to build momentum. Use all means to spread the news of Lin Sure's death throughout the mulberry forest. The more exaggerated it is, the greater the blow to the human empire. K was complacent and didn't hide his thoughts. Although the means seemed a little disgraceful, this was the war between the two camps. As long as the morale of the human tribe and the empire could be defeated, it didn't matter if it was glorious or not. "Let's do it." The nearby voodoo barbarians all agreed. They acted decisively and quickly. Soon, they dispersed, contacted the voodoo barbarians scattered in the mulberry forest, and spread the news everywhere. The reason why they were so active was that the existence of Lin Sun had brought a lot of shadows and blows to the voodoo barbarian tribe before, which made them all resentful and full of anger. A young man in the Tao Insight realm, with only a mysterious big bow, made the half-step king warrior on their side have to be afraid of him, which made them feel terrible. Now, Lin Sun was chased by 3 half-step king warriors, and there was no news about him, which made them completely conclude that Lin Sun had been killed, so they spread the news so widely. "Lin Sure is dead. Is that all your empire can do? It's really sad that you can't even protect a young talent." "Haha, what bullshit talent. In the eyes of our voodoo barbarians, he is just a chicken and a dog. Not worth mentioning. Now that Lin Sure is dead, what can you do?" Similar news, like a storm, began to sweep across the mulberry forest. Those strong voodoo barbarians were all in high spirits and exalted. For them, this news was great news, which was enough to make them clap their hands and shout for joy. Hee hee, this is the talent of your empire? Just SOSO. Get out of here. Otherwise, not only Lin Shurer, but all the bastards of your empire will be killed. Some more unbearable words came out of the voodoo barbarians' mouths. They seemed to be unscrupulous and extremely proud. They had been holding it in for a long time, and now they finally vented their anger, which made them feel very happy. Meanwhile, the practitioners of the empire were in turmoil. They were all angry, sad, and helpless. Such news of Lin Shur's death was really a big blow to them. You've gone too far. When learning the news, General Xiahou Jie roared with anger. His voice shook the sky and made people's hearts tremble. But this made the voodoo barbarians even more happy. King Yin Xiong said disdainfully, "You're only noisy and incompetent." Just as the wind was surging and the clouds were surging, a shocking piece of news came out. Young Master Lin is not dead. Today he showed up in person and killed Tung Hai, the half-step king of Earth Barbarian clan, with one arrow. All of a sudden, the noisy discussion stopped abruptly. Those complacent, flamboyant voodoo barbarians who were cursing happily were all dumbfounded. They fell into dead silence and were dumbfounded. The slap in the face came as fast as a tornado. They were caught off guard. Even the practitioners of the empire were a little confused. Lin Shur was not dead, and he killed Tung Hai, the half-step king of Earth barbarians? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. This time, we sent 3 half-step king of Earth barbarians. How could he still be alive? Among the strong voodoo barbarians, some big shots roared. They were trying their best to investigate the authenticity of this news. Even Winning Sparrow, who was adding fuel to the fire in the dark, looked uncertain. How could this be? Was that guy so tough? Soon, the news was confirmed. Tung Hai was indeed killed. His body was penetrated by an arrow and exploded like fireworks. He died miserably. Suddenly, there seemed to be a big earthquake in the mulberry forest. All the strong voodoo barbarians who didn't want to believe the news were completely petrified and almost collapsed. How could this be? All the strong voodoo barbarians who learned the news were so angry that their faces turned green. They looked as if they were mourning the death of their parents and were about to vomit blood. This was a great blow. Just a moment ago, they were still announcing the death of Lin Sun and ridiculing the practitioners of the empire. They wanted to take this opportunity to severely damage the morale of the practitioners of the empire. But they didn't expect that the slap in the face would come soon. It was indeed like being slapped hard in the face by an invisible slap, burning with pain. On the side of the empire, they were all shocked and ecstatic. He was not dead. Sure enough, Lin Shur was not dead. Not long ago, they were depressed, resentful, and helpless because of the blow. How could they expect that in the end, there was a reversal? Ha ha! Child Lin is so amazing. Well done. Those voodoo barbarians are blind. How dare they say that Grandmaster Lin was killed? It's ridiculous. Hey, I'm curious. Those voodoo barbarians were arrogant and complacent before. What will their expressions be now? On the side of the empire, there was a complete uproar. They cheered excitedly, and their morale was greatly boosted. Have you noticed that Child Lin showed up alive and killed a half-step king warrior? But there has been no news from the 3 half-step king warriors who chased after Child Lin before. Does this mean that they have all been killed by Child Lin? When this speculation came into being, it caused another round of sensation. Some top figures of the empire were shocked and moved. As for the voodoo barbarians, they were all numb and cold. Yes, if Lin Shur was alive, wouldn't the 3 half-step king warriors with Spirit Peak, Jean Dujin, and Kanglin Snow be, they didn't dare to think about it anymore. Who could imagine that Lin Shur didn't die in the end? Instead, he killed Tung Hai, a half-step king warrior, and even with Spirit Peak might be killed by him? If they counted carefully, there were as many as 5 half-step king warriors of the voodoo barbarian tribe who had been killed by Lin Shur. This was absolutely a terrifying number. After all, half-step king warriors were not cabbages. Even in the voodoo barbarian camp, They were a top-level deterrent force. Their number was extremely small, second only to the real king warriors. But now, 5 half-step king warriors have been killed by a young man at the Tao Insight realm. This was a serious blow to the voodoo barbarian tribe. For a while, the discussions and uproars were like landslides and tsunamis. On the side of the empire, even General Xiahou Jia was not stingy with his praise and laughed. And King Flame Qiong, who was extremely arrogant and disdainful before, fell into a rare silence. This result also caught him off guard. NK and other strong voodoo barbarians were all dumbfounded and couldn't speak for a long time. Originally, all of this was secretly added fuel to the fire by wantonly publicizing and constantly building momentum. They never thought that when the morale of the strong voodoo barbarians was at its highest, there would be such a shocking turn. It was like being pushed from heaven to hell. The contrast was so great that they were so depressed that they were about to vomit blood. The momentum they had built up had made them embarrassed and aggrieved. Who could bear such a blow? It would be an understatement to say that they had lifted a stone only to drop it on their own feet. This was purely asking to be slapped and humiliated. Chapter 732. This matter was indeed very sad. A series of promotion and contrast, in the end, showed Lin Sun's divine power and brilliant achievements, which almost drove NK crazy. Some strong voodoo barbarians nearby also looked terrible. They were so angry that they had nowhere to vent their anger. They even looked at Lu Wan with a touch of resentment. There was nothing he could do about it. He was the only human here. Lu Wan's face was livid. He felt uncomfortable all over, as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He was also extremely aggrieved. He hated Lin Sun for a long time and wished that Lin Sun could be killed as soon as possible. But the reality was so cruel. What annoyed him most was that these voodoo barbarians hated him for no reason. Was it true that those who were not of the same tribe must have different intentions? Anyway, this time Lin Sun appeared alive and reversed the situation with his brilliant achievements. In the end, the voodoo barbarian tribe's morale was hit hard. Many strong voodoo barbarians were anxious. Lin Shi was still alive. This was not only a blow to the morale, but also a similar tragic thing might happen in the future. Sure enough, their worries came true. On the same day, an imperial practitioner spoke on behalf of Lin Sun. Child Lin said, "Let the half-step king barbarians among you barbarians wash your necks and wait." A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Those strong voodoo barbarians were all stunned. This guy still wanted to continue killing? And those half-step king barbarians were even more shocked and angry. Lin Sun was threatening them. He was absolutely lawless. But they had no choice but to be afraid. Too many half-step king barbarians had died in Lin Sun's hands. It might be a fluke if it happened once, but if it happened many times, there would be no fluke at all. Even the 3 barbarian kings, King Yin Xiong, King Jinpa, and King Lei Xiao, were so angry and livid when they heard the news. A young man of Tao Insight realm dared to be so arrogant in the mulberry forest. Did he really think these old guys were just decorations? Child Lin, good job. What do you mean by swallowing thousands of miles like tiger? That's it. Got his eyes. It's absolutely a blessing for our empire to have such a talent like Child Lin. The imperial practitioners were completely stirred, and their admiration for Lin Sun had reached an unprecedented level. A young man of Tao Insight realm killed half-step king barbarians as if he was drinking tea. Who could not be convinced, amazed, and admired him? On the same day, even Lin Sun, who was searching for strange jades in the mulberry forest, heard the news. But he didn't expect that it would be so noisy, which was totally beyond his expectation and imagination. Lin Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry on the way. Some strong voodoo barbarians he met on the way fled in panic, with pale faces like frightened birds before Lin Sun could take action. Some practitioners of the empire he met stepped forward to greet him warmly. Their eyes lit up, which made Lin uncomfortable. When they learned that Lin Sun was looking for some strange jades, these practitioners were even more generous and gave some of the strange jades they had collected these days to Lin Sun. How could Lin Sun accept a reward without doing anything? But he couldn't stand the enthusiasm of the other party, who seemed to look down on him if he didn't accept it. In the end, Lin Sun could only accept this kindness. In just 2 days, Lin Sun had unknowingly obtained a full bag of strange jades, at least 500 or 600 of them. Lin Sun couldn't help but click his tongue. This speed was much faster than exploring by himself. Originally, Lin Sun was still a little vigilant and alert. After all, he made too much noise this time. Although the 3 half-step king barbarians of Wood Spirit Peak didn't die in his hands, no one would believe that he didn't do it even if he explained it now. In addition, he had said that he would continue to kill the half-step king barbarians of Voodoo Barbarian tribe, so he had already become the focus of attention. At this time, Lin Sun didn't doubt that Voodoo Barbarian tribe could bear such a big loss. In other words, the enemy would never give up. Therefore, in the next action, Lin Sun had been highly vigilant. He even speculated that the king of Voodoo Barbarian tribe might not be able to bear it and attack him. But soon, something happened suddenly, which helped Lin Sun resolve all the potential threats. On this day, in a ruin in the depths of the mulberry forest, there suddenly appeared a shocking phenomenon. Mysterious cyan clouds condensed into flowers and fell from the sky. That scene was no different from the legendary heavenly flower shower. At the same time, a mysterious Taoist palace appeared in that area. Just the stairs alone had 9,999 steps. It was like a stairway to heaven. The Taoist palace was towering and majestic, standing between heaven and earth, exuding a magnificent and boundless sacred aura, which dyed the world with a layer of magnificent and brilliant aura. This was undoubtedly the descent of a great fortuitous encounter. All of a sudden, both the Empire and the Voodoo Barbarian tribe were stirred. All the top figures were alarmed and rushed over there with all their strength. At this time, it was impossible for those big figures to pay attention to Lin Sun anymore. But in this way, Lin Sun was much more relaxed. After thinking about it, he finally decided to leave this mulberry forest. He had collected enough strange jades and accomplished the purpose of this trip. He was sure that the broken blade could undergo the transformation. As for the mysterious Taoist palace that suddenly appeared, although Lin Sun was curious, he was very calm. He knew that it was no different from courting death to go there with his own ability. Perhaps he could kill a half-step king, but he could only rely on the power of insignificant bow and blue sky arrow, which could only be used once at most. It was impossible for him to fight for a long time. At a time like this, competing for the fortuitous encounters with those true kings would definitely be courting death. Moreover, Lin Sun had a hunch that those horrible creatures lurking in various areas of the mulberry forest would certainly not be willing to be lonely. Sure enough, on the way Lin Sun retreated, he heard a cicada chirping. Then, a horrible sacred aura swept out and rushed to the depths of the mulberry forest. At the same time, a bloody light appeared in another area. A bloody moth wrapped in a void storm, like a black hole that swallowed everything, also started to move. Boom! What made Lin Sun's scalp numb was that in the area where he killed Tung Hai, the half-step king of Qi, a huge green dragon with a length of thousands of meters rushed out of the air. It was suffused with sacred breath and roared, breaking the void and leaving. Obviously, the cyan dragon was the horrible creature lurking in the depths of the underground cave. Even the horrible creatures who have stepped into the divine path have come out. What kind of shocking secret is hidden in the Taoist palace? Lin Sun was shocked, but all this also strengthened his mind to leave the mulberry forest. An unpredictable bloody storm was bound to take place near the Taoist palace. Even the kings of the Empire and the Voodoo Barbarian tribe would face the danger of death. Lin Sun didn't want to stay in this damn place any longer. Although the opportunity was great, if he didn't have the ability to seize it, he would only be cannon fodder. One day later, Lin Sun returned to the edge of the entrance of the mulberry forest without any danger. When he arrived here, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It was too dangerous along the way. Many horrible creatures appeared along the way. Although there was no existence at the divine level, there was no lack of monsters at the king level. Like a broken bronze spear, it seemed to have intelligence and released a dim, sacred aura. Obviously, it was a broken divine weapon, but its power was more fierce than that of a real king. There was also a strange golden flower. As the petals fluttered, golden lights flew like sword rain, tearing the void. Obviously, it was also a king realm existence. In addition, there were many strange and unknown creatures, which seemed to wake up from silence and rush to the depths of the mulberry forest. Lin Sun had seen with his own eyes that almost all the escaping strongmen, whether they were from the Empire or the voodoo barbarian tribe, were killed by these horrible creatures simply and rudely. This was the mulberry forest with the title of Devil's Soil, stained with divine blood. It was at this time that Lin Sun finally realized the horror here. Compared with places such as Burial of Tao Sea and Ultimate in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea, it was not inferior at all. Fortunately, I didn't go to the mysterious Taoist palace this time. Otherwise, Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart just thinking about it. Without hesitation, he rushed out of the mulberry forest. On the way, there were also many imperial practitioners and voodoo barbarians fleeing. Like Lin Sun, they sensed the danger and didn't dare to stay any longer in order to save their lives. What? Soon after he left the mulberry forest, Lin Sun sensed a familiar figure in his soul. Lu Wen. This guy was fleeing with a group of strong voodoo barbarians in a hurry. Immediately, Lin Sun noticed Inkei, the young master of the dark barbarian tribe, among the group of strong voodoo barbarians. Ho ho, it's a small world. Lin Sun's lips curled into a cold arc, and he followed up without a trace. I don't want to give up. This time, we not only failed to kill Lin Shi, but also didn't have a chance to intervene when the opportunity appeared. With a gloomy face, Inkei and his group were flying forward. At this time, both the imperial practitioners and the voodoo barbarians were fleeing. No one was in the mood to fight with them, which made them less fetters and obstacles. Young lord, don't be discouraged. Where there's life, there's hope. With your current foundation, sooner or later, you can set foot on the path of Taoism. Lu Wen hurriedly comforted him. What I hate is that not only did this operation come to nothing, but it also made Lin Shi famous again. That damned little bastard. If he did not have the help of that mysterious bow, how could he possibly possess such heaven-defying strength? At the mention of Lin Sun, Inkei was so angry that he gnashed his teeth and his eyes almost popped out. Lu Wen also cursed with resentment. Young lord, people like Lin Shi are destined to suffer. He shows off too much. As the saying goes, the taller the tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. The more dazzling he is now, the more miserable he will die when he suffers the disaster. Really? At this moment, an indifferent and low voice suddenly sounded, which made Lu Wen stiff all over and almost scared out of his wits. This voice, he was so familiar with it. Chapter 733. Lin Shi. Lu Wen was stunned as if he was struck by lightning. He didn't expect that he would suddenly meet Lin Sun when he just escaped from Mulberry Woods. Young lord, be careful, Lu Wen roared. At this time, his first reaction was to warn Quebec. He had to admit that this guy did have the potential to be a traitor. Puff. But when Lu Wen's voice sounded, he saw a bloody hole suddenly appeared in the throat of Inkei beside him. Inkei was obviously not prepared at all. He still looked shocked. It was hard for him to imagine that he would be killed so abruptly, even at the moment of his death. He was the young lord of the dark barbarian tribe. He was a born assassin who walked in the shadows and made all the practitioners of the empire change their faces. But now, he had been killed without even noticing it at all. Clatter! A stream of scarlet blood burst out from Inkei's throat and sprinkled on Lu Wen's face. He was so shocked that he couldn't help screaming, and his soul almost left his body. Dead? Lu Wen didn't feel good at all. His heart was overwhelmed by fear. Inkei, the young lord of the dark barbarian tribe, was a top figure in the young generation of the voodoo barbarian camp. Many old monsters thought highly of him and thought that he was very likely to become a barbarian emperor who set foot on the path of cultivation in the future. But now, Inkei was dead, Lu Wen was not mourning for him, but he had pinned all his hopes on Nkei and hoped to stand firm in the Voodoo barbarian tribe with Nkei's appreciation in the future. But now, all his hopes were shattered. Lu Wen felt that the sky had collapsed. He was stunned because of panic and confusion. Fierce fighting sounds, shrill screams, and terrible collisions came to his ears. But Lu Wen looked dull and lost. His hope was gone. As a traitor, he could no longer return to the camp of the Empire. With Nkei's death, there was no place for him in the Voodoo barbarian tribe. Lu Wen felt an indescribable despair. "Do you want to kill yourself? Or let me do it?" Lin Sun's voice rang in Lu Wen's ears like a thunderclap, waking him up from the endless despair. He looked around and saw corpses of Voodoo barbarians on the ground. Lin Sun was standing there, looking at him quietly. In the distance, some Imperial practitioners were watching and whispering to each other. Their faces were filled with disdain and loathing. "It's over." The last string in Lu Wen's heart snapped, and his mind went blank. "I hate him so much. If it weren't for you, how could I have betrayed the Empire? How could I have fallen to such a state today?" Lu Wen seemed to have completely gone mad. His expression was distorted as he roared. With bloodshot eyes, he stared at Lin Sun fiercely, as if he wanted to eat him alive. "It's all your fault. It's your fault." As he roared, he charged forward with a saber in hand. Puff! Before it could even approach, Lu Wen's neck was severed by the broken blade, and a bloody head flew into the air. Even at the moment of his death, he still had a sinister and resentful expression. Lin Sun turned around and left without looking back. Lu Wen didn't feel any remorse even when he died. Instead, he blamed all the mistakes on Lin Sun. His death was not worth pitying. Before leaving, Lin Sun looked back at the mulberry forest behind him, which was shrouded in blood mist, mysterious and unknown. But Lin Sun knew clearly that in the depths of the mulberry forest, a bloody storm was unfolding around a mysterious Taoist palace that had emerged. "There are saints lurking here with too many secrets. Maybe one day I can come back and explore it." Inexplicably, Lin Sun thought of the solemn golden cicada and its almost absurd wish. He hoped that one day, all the creatures in the world could become saints. In the evening, before the night fell, Lin Sun finally returned to Camp 7. "You didn't die?" Hearing the news, Lu Wenting jumped out like an old rabbit with excitement on his face. These days, he almost spent in fear and trepidation, fearing that some bad news about Lin Sun would come. Now, seeing Lin Sun return safely, he undoubtedly let out a long sigh of relief. Immediately after, Lu Wenting started to grumble and complain. "You're too willful, leaving just like that. Don't you know how dangerous it is? Do you know how serious the consequences will be if something happens to you? Do you know?" Lin Sun felt a headache. When he was about to find a chance to return to his room, a thunderous roar sounded. "How dare you come back?" General Sun Lai also came after hearing the news. With a face full of anger, he scolded Lin Sun in a voice so loud that the whole camp could hear him. Lin Sun also knew that his action made them very worried. Knowing that he was in the wrong, he could only stand there obediently and accept the scolding. If the top figures in the mulberry forest saw this, their jaws would drop. Who could imagine that Lin Shi, who was as strong as a young devil, could be so obedient and docile? Zhang Sunlai let Lin Sun go after venting his anger. But before leaving, he warned Lin Sun that if Lin Sun dared to act alone again, he would never spare him. It was not until the night fell that Lin finally returned to his room. Clang! Lin Sun opened his luggage. All kinds of ores and spiritual materials poured out like running water, piling up on the ground. Except for some high-rank spiritual crystals that originally belonged to him. The rest were all trophies obtained in the mulberry forest. Among them, there were rare spiritual materials, mysterious ores of unknown use, broken iron pieces, blood-stained fur, and so on. The largest number was the mysterious jade, with 500 or 600 pieces. Lin Sun sorted out the 5th-grade treasures and stored them in different categories. Although some of them could not be used for the time being, their value was immeasurable. There would be a time when they could be of use in the future. Finally, He took out the broken blade and inserted it into the pile of mysterious jade. It should be enough for the broken blade to be completely repaired and transformed. Staring at the broken blade that began to absorb the mysterious vitality, Lin Sun couldn't help showing a touch of expectation in his eyes. Whoosh, before long, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the bed and began to meditate. This time the mulberry forest, it was a blessing in disguise. After meditating on the ice tree for a whole night, his cultivation also leaped into the mastery of Tao Insight Realm. Moreover, this sort of breakthrough wasn't just reflected in one's cultivation. Even the strength of one's soul had undergone a tremendous change. Now, Lin Sun had the time to experience this change. In the sea of his consciousness, meditating magic was running. In an instant, an ice moon emerged, and thousands of spiritual stars were also lit up, surrounding the full moon, sprinkling clear divine light. Different from the past, all these visions were soon submerged by a blazing light. It was a dazzling sun, rising slowly over the sea of his consciousness, shining brilliantly and becoming the only master in the sea of his consciousness. Boom! Lin Sun's soul suddenly trembled violently. Then, as if a layer of shackles covering his soul had been broken, he had a feeling that he was about to fly away from his shell. In a trance, Lin Sun seemed to come to the sky, flying higher and higher. The whole Camp 7 was reflected in his mind. The guards guarding the camp, the practitioners drinking and having fun in the tavern, Lu Winning who was busy in the munitions office, and the clanking sounds of the ordnance office. All kinds of pictures and sounds emerged in Lin Sun's mind like a huge tide. The gray haze in the sky, the bloody airflow in the void, and the slightest change of each practitioner's expression were also seen by Lin Sun. What? When Lin Sun looked at the place where Zhang Sunlai lived in the distance, he only saw a beam of divine light rising straight to the sky, vigorous and chilling, like billowing smoke, terrifying and boundless. Everything there could not be perceived at all, and it also made Lin Sun feel a kind of unprecedented oppression and fear. Was this the power of the life-death realm? He couldn't be detected or spied on. Whoosh! The next moment, Lin Sun withdrew his spiritual power and returned to his body. Almost at the same time, in Zhang Sunlai's room in the distance, there was a slight sound of surprise. That boy's spiritual power is so strong. Has he condensed his primordial spirit? He suddenly got up, with an unpredictable luster surging in his eyes. It's true. This little monster has done it one step ahead of time. It's really against the natural order. Sun Glory, the third realm of meditating magic. In the room, Lin Sun was enlightened. Moreover, his spiritual power has condensed a primordial spirit. What I just saw is the magical effect of the consciousness of the primordial spirit. This is the spiritual awareness. Only practitioners who have condensed a primordial spirit can possess such power. At this stage, they can already use their divine sense to fight. As long as the primordial spirit is not destroyed, it will not be killed. But, thinking of this, Lin Sun was in a trance. Only practitioners in the reincarnation developing realm could master the power of primordial spirit and spiritual awareness, but now he had mastered them in advance. Spiritual power, related to a practitioner's understanding and wisdom, was the most amazing and incredible. The stronger the spiritual power, the greater the benefits in cultivation. This was a well-known fact in the cultivation world. Once a practitioner had the primordial spirit, he could have the mysterious means of multitasking, commanding the spirit to kill the enemy, deducing good or bad luck, and so on. The full mastery of Tao Insight Realm. The spiritual power condensed the primordial spirit and the cultivation of martial arts and enlightenment. Lin Sun meditated while meditating. What he pursued was the most powerful and complete Tao. Therefore, when his cultivation reached the full mastery of Tao Insight Realm, he had to start to consider the preparation for breaking through to the reincarnation developing realm. Breaking through the realm might not be too troublesome for Lin Sun, but if he wanted to continue on his peerless path, he must temper all his strength to the full mastery before breaking through the realm. At that time, it was the real full mastery. The next morning, Lin Sun, who was meditating, was awakened by a sudden sound of saber. He looked up and couldn't help showing a touch of surprise in his eyes. Chapter 734. As early as a few days ago. But the news that came back this morning seemed to be very unusual. The 12th child Lin killed 4 half-step king beings with his bow and shocked the enemies. He showed the power of our empire. K, the young master of the dark barbarian royal family, was killed by the 12th child Lin, and the traitor Lu Wen was executed. In the Battle of the Mulberry Forest, child Lin rose strongly in the killing. He carried out bloody killings with the means of a demon, which made the strong barbarians tremble with fear. News after news about Lin Sun's military exploits fell in Camp 7 like snowflakes, which immediately caused a sensation among all practitioners. Child Lin is really a god. Huang, the guard leader stationed in the camp, patted his thigh excitedly, and his face lit up. This boy, I was worried about him. Who would have thought that he was so fierce? In the quartermaster office, Lu Wenting, who was dealing with official business, was so shocked that he almost jumped up, and then he was overjoyed and in a good mood. Today, practitioners who came to the quartermaster office to exchange military exploits were surprised to find that Lu Wenting, who had always been serious, was extremely enthusiastic and kind. Every time he saw a practitioner, he smiled and said, "Oh, I must go to have a drink with Child Lin tonight. As a friend, I have to celebrate for him." Often at this time, he would attract a burst of envious eyes. It was an honor to have a drink with Lin Sun, not to mention to be friends with the 12th child Lin. Not only does Master Lin have great attainments in spiritual tattoos, but he is also a peerless talent in martial arts cultivation. In the ordnance office, a group of spiritual tattooists were in high spirits, excited and proud. Even Mastering nodded frequently, stroking his beard. Lu Wen became a traitor. Hu Tong, the head of Star Frost mercenary group, had mixed feelings. He never thought that Lu Wen, who was confirmed dead by him, was not only alive, but also betrayed the empire and turned to the barbarian bastards. Such a person should be cut into pieces and die miserably. A boy next to him said with hatred and disgust, "I can only say that Child Lin killed him well." In the end, she thought of Lin Sun's brilliant military exploits in the mulberry forest today, and an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. This young man, whom she had once regarded as a pretty boy, was actually a heaven-defying heaven's favorite. To think that she had even declared that she would protect him. In the tavern, on the street, and among the practitioners in groups of 3 or 5, they were all talking about Lin Sun's dazzling performance this time, which made them admire and marvel. After all, a Grotto Heaven Realm youngster was able to kill so many half-step kings in succession after appearing in the bloodthirsty battlefield. This was simply too inconceivable. Boom! The table in front of Zhang Sun, Lai, was once again smashed into pieces. At this moment, he had a strange expression on his face as he muttered, "Where did that old bastard bloodthirsty king find such a monster? He's simply amazing. I've seen all sorts of geniuses in my life, but I've never seen anyone as heaven-defying as this kid." Outside the door, the corner of the guard's mouth twitched fiercely when he heard the sound of the table shattering. He felt a headache. Recently, because of Lin Shi, the general had smashed several tables. Now he had to replace them with new ones. It seems that it's time to prepare more tables for future use. The guard decided to prepare for a rainy day, because he felt that as long as Lin Sun was still in Camp 7, similar things would definitely continue to happen. It was absolutely right to prepare more tables. Not only in Camp 7, but also in other camps of the Empire. When the news about Lin Sun came out, it set off countless uproars and discussions like a bombshell. Young child Lin Shi is a peerless talent. This was the unanimous evaluation of most practitioners. In the room, Lin Sun's eyes were firmly attracted. The broken blade was floating in the air in the light, and the ground was piled up with broken jade powder. The broken blade had metamorphosed. Its pitch-black blade became as white as snow, almost transparent, as if it was made of mutton fat jade. Strands of dazzling starlight coiled around it like a dream, and it caused the broken blade to emanate an unprecedented, imposing aura. It was no longer as fierce and frightening as before. Instead, it had a kind of holy aura, shining with mysterious and obscure fluctuations. Lin Sun was amazed at this moment. It was too illusory and brilliant, like a masterpiece of God. Clang! Lin Sun held it in his hand, like picking up a feather. It was as light as a feather. The blade shed starlight like rain, illuminating the dark room and giving it a holy aura. Lin Sun's eyes fell on the surface of the blade, where there were dense and clear Taoist lines emerging inside the nearly transparent broken blade. Just a glance at it made Lin Sun's mind tremble. He felt a kind of vast, mysterious, and boundless aura. This was a change that had never happened before. Lin Sun couldn't help but send out a wisp of his spiritual awareness to perceive the mysterious Taoist lines. Whoosh! Something strange happened suddenly. The broken blade disappeared out of thin air. At the same time, Lin Sun's sea of consciousness shook and turned upside down, as if something strange had been stuffed into it. Suddenly, Lin Sun was shocked to find that the broken blade had appeared in his sea of consciousness. It was as white as snow and almost transparent, sprinkling wisps of starlight like a dream. When Lin Sun ran the power of his spirit, in an instant, there was a wonderful echo with the broken blade in his sea of consciousness. It seemed that the broken blade had turned into a part of his body and become the guardian of his spirit. It felt like blood melted into water. Moreover, the broken blade imperceptibly received a type of nourishment from the primordial spirit. It let out a joyful cry and danced around the primordial spirit endlessly. Whoosh! Lin Sun's mind moved, and the broken blade suddenly swept out. At that moment, it was like a dazzling white lightning tearing the void. The sound of the blade was so impassioned that all the furnishings in the room were smashed into powder. Lin Sun took a breath of cold air. What a strong power! Whoosh! The next moment, the broken blade flew in the void according to Lin Sun's mind. Like a nimble fish, it flashed and danced in the narrow room with wisps of starlight like its tail. Clatter! The power released by the broken blade made the void fluctuate violently like a tide, making a deafening sound. The entire house began to shake violently. Seeing this, Lin Sun was shocked. With a thought, the broken blade suddenly turned into a wisp of white light and disappeared in his sea of consciousness. The room became quiet, but Lin Sun couldn't calm down for a long time. He was quite excited. Only now did he suddenly realize that he had used the broken blade wrongly in the past. This treasure could completely be called a true divine weapon. What was a magic weapon? It was a treasure controlled by spirit. Just like the legendary sword god in ancient times, a flying sword could kill ghosts and gods, break the universe, and disturb yin and yang. In short, it was a treasure that could be controlled by spiritual awareness. It could be called a magic weapon. This spirit was the name of the spirit. Such a treasure was extremely rare in the current world. It was too rare. Even the old monsters of the life and death realm might not possess it. As a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos, Lin Sun knew that the reason why the magic weapon was rare was that the spiritual materials needed to refine it were so rare that they could only be found by chance. Although Lin Sun had obtained all kinds of strange and precious spiritual materials since he started his cultivation, he had never encountered a spiritual material that could be used to refine a magic weapon. This kind of spiritual material was often called magic material by spiritual tattooists. Whoosh! Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun suppressed his excitement and began to meditate quietly, visualizing the broken blade floating in his sea of consciousness. After the transformation of the broken blade, the vague Tao lines on its surface became clear, which looked very magical. Boom! As soon as Lin Sun sensed the mysterious Tao lines with his spiritual awareness, his whole soul seemed to suffer a terrible impact and felt torn. He couldn't help groaning, and his spirit throbbed. Sunshine! Lin Sun ran the meditating magic without hesitation. In his sea of consciousness, a great sun rose up and shone brightly, brilliant and magnificent. Suddenly, the throbbing spirit stabilized again, which made Lin Sun feel a lingering fear. Even the top practitioners of reincarnation developing realm might not be able to bear the impact just now. If it weren't for the magical effect of the meditating magic, Lin Sun suspected that his spirit would collapse completely. Immediately, Lin Sun had no time to think about it. His mind was attracted by a simple formation map. It was the formation map reflected by the mysterious Tao lines on the surface of the broken blade. It was ancient and vast, and outlined a word Yuan. Every stroke was like the trace of the Great Way, branded with the mysterious breath of the Great Way, with a kind of unpredictable power that made people's souls want to sink into it. Boom! When Lin Sun tried to perceive it, a stream of inheritance power, like a vast ocean, rumbled into Lin Sun's spirit. This was a kind of inheritance from the mysterious Tao lines on the broken blade. In an instant, Lin Sun had a lot of incredible insights, which were clearly imprinted in his mind as if he had been enlightened. It turns out that the inheritance left by the Tao lines is about the method of using the broken blade. After a long time, Lin Sun was completely enlightened, and his heart was suddenly enlightened. This caused him to be visibly moved. The broken blade actually had a secret technique that complemented it. This was simply too inconceivable. Lin Sun knew that it was too difficult to get this inheritance. If it hadn't been for the transformation of the broken blade, he would not have had the opportunity to unveil the mysterious veil of the broken blade. Similarly, if it hadn't been for his powerful soul power, condensing the spirit, and the meditating magic, he would not have been able to get this inheritance. After a long time, Lin Sun calmed down completely. Suddenly, he noticed that there were 3 mysterious formation maps near the Yuan Tao lines. However, they were too vague and almost invisible. They could only be noticed, but the mystery in them could not be sensed at all. It seems that the inheritance of the broken blade is divided into 4 parts. Now I have only mastered the first secret method of using the broken blade. If I want to get the second secret method, I have to wait until the broken blade transforms for the second time. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Chapter 735. Bloody Storm and Rumors of a Bloody Storm. Next chapter. In the evening, in an area dozens of miles away from Camp 7. Swish of bright light swept out, dragging a bright tail of starlight, and suddenly cut on a mountain not far away. Boom! Like a knife cutting tofu, the mountain was easily cut in half, and the cut was smooth. That wasn't the end of it. The snow-white, translucent, and almost transparent broken blade flickered incessantly, slashing, slicing, and stabbing. Everywhere it passed, it tore open a series of terrifying cracks in space. Then there was a loud rumbling sound. The mountain peak, which was dozens of feet high, was cut into neat and tidy chunks of boulders, and then rolled down. Swish! At this time, the broken blade had already flown back and floated in front of Lin Sun. It was as bright as jade, crystal clear, overflowing with holy starlight, without a trace of damage. Lin Sun stood there and pondered quietly. The so-called spirit control skill was not complicated. It was a way to use the divine awareness as a means to control the magic weapon. Spirit, one's own cultivation, and the magic weapon formed a complementary relationship. The stronger one's cultivation was, the more terrifying the power of the magic weapon would be. The stronger the power of the spirit, the more delicate and handy the control of the magic weapon would be. At the same time, the power of the divine weapon itself could allow one's cultivation and the control of the primordial spirit to be maximized. However, while it sounded easy, it was actually rather difficult to cultivate. Duan Rin's Yuan Dao pattern formation diagram contained extremely complicated secrets, and if one wanted to completely master it, one had to practice it continuously. Based on the power of the broken blade alone, it is more than twice as powerful as before. Furthermore, with the mind control technique, its power has increased by a large margin. Based on this, I can easily kill a great reincarnation developing realm cultivator. Unlike Insignificance Bow, the broken blade doesn't consume much power. As long as I don't meet a half-step king, it's enough for me to fight for a long time. Lin Sun made a comparison in his mind. In the following time, Lin Sun continued to practice the method of spirit control. The progress was very smooth, and the results were gratifying. At the same time, one barren mountain after another collapsed with deafening noises. Very quickly, the Shioja of Camp 7 were alarmed and came to watch. At the beginning, these practitioners were very surprised, because in their impression, Lin Sun's best fighting method was archery. Moreover, everyone in the bloodthirsty battlefield knew that young Master Lin's archery skills were unparalleled. Therefore, when they saw that Lin Sun was not practicing archery, these practitioners were so shocked. But very quickly, they were curious. Apart from archery, what about young Master Lin's other combat skills? Then, when they saw Lin Sun manipulate the broken blade to destroy the barren mountains one after another and raze the area to the ground, these practitioners were all stunned, and their state of mind changed from curiosity to shock. It was really hard for them to imagine that such a young man in the Tao Insight realm was not only heaven-defying in archery, but also so amazing in other combat methods. Could young Master Lin be the legendary Heavenly Son? He's too strong. The hearts of many Shioja wavered. I'm afraid I can't withstand one blow from young Master Lin if I fight with an enemy. Yin Feng also came. He stared at Lin Sun for a while, and his expression became extremely solemn, and his eyes were in a trance. As a famous top practitioner in the reincarnation developing realm in Camp 7, Yin Feng's words immediately caused an uproar among the nearby Shioja. Spirit control. The broken blade in his hand is a magic weapon. In the depths of the camp, Zhang Sun Lai's eyes flashed with terrifying lightning. A bow and a broken blade are both so powerful. Does this guy have great luck? Lin Sun didn't return to the camp with a tired face until the night fell. However, compared to this, his heart was filled with joy and satisfaction. The void Dao Mark's method of controlling the soul could be said to be miraculous and unfathomable, and it allowed the broken blade to display such formidable might that even he was surprised. Greetings, young Master Lin. Grandmaster Lin, when are you going to kill the voodoo barbarian bastards again? I'm willing to follow you and charge in a battle with you. Young Master Lin, are you free tonight? Can I have a drink with you? On the way back to the camp, all the Shioja greeted Lin Sun warmly, with admiration and admiration in their eyes. Lin Sun returned the greetings with a smile and declined some invitations. Now he was obsessed with practicing martial arts and had no time to entertain people. As the night fell, the camp was brightly lit. However, this night was destined to be turbulent. Soon, an imperial spy rushed into the camp in the dark and hurried to the room of General Zhang Sun Lai. What? General Xiahou Jie is dead? Zhang Sun Lai's angry voice sounded in the room. At the same time, with a bang, the table in front of him turned into sawdust and flew in the air. What the hell is going on? Zhang Sun Lai suppressed his inner shock and asked in a low voice. Finally, after knowing everything, Zhang Sun Lai's face was livid and gloomy. He fell into complete silence without saying a word. The next morning, the whole Camp 7 was in shock. All the Shioja of the Empire were anxious, and the atmosphere was solemn and dead silent. Last night, the latest news from the mulberry forest was like a bolt from the blue, making all the Shioja of the Empire fall into shock and panic. General Xiahou Jie, the life-death realm king of the Empire, was dead. This was absolutely a big event, like a storm, which was hard to accept. A king was the top power in a camp. Like a stabilizing needle, it was so powerful that the enemy dared not to invade the camp. Now, a king died, which was like a corner of the sky falling down. No one could stay calm. It was said that a mysterious Taoist palace had appeared in the mulberry forest, and that it hid a great opportunity. It attracted many terrifying creatures that were hibernating in the mulberry forest to fight for it, and General Xiahou Jie was killed in the midst of this struggle. It's terrible. I heard that the murderer was a cyan flood dragon that had stepped into the divine path. It took General Xiahou Jie's life just by waving its claws. There is more than one horrible creature that has stepped into the divine path. It is said that almost all the Xiuzha and voodoo barbarians who got close to the mysterious Taoist palace were killed there. How hateful! The news could not be hidden at all. Even Lin Sun, who was obsessed with practicing the imperial secret method, was alarmed. Although he had a premonition, when he heard the news of Xiahou Jie's death, his heart still trembled, and he stood there in silence. Although Lin Sun had never met Xiahou Jie had spoken up many times in the mulberry forest and protected Lin Sun with his power and influence. But such a supremely righteous king had fallen. Lin Sun's mood became gloomy, and he felt lost. Several days later, more and more news about the mulberry forest came back, plunging the Xiuzha of the empire into mourning. The atmosphere was oppressive and dead. Near the mysterious Taoist palace, horrible creatures that have stepped into the divine path started a shocking battle and blew up that area. All the Xiuzha who got close were affected and killed on the spot. According to statistics, more than a dozen half-step Xiuzha have died so far. Even the General Xie Xian is missing. The gate of the mysterious Taoist palace has been opened. Great opportunities have come to the world. Those horrible creatures that have stepped into the divine path have completely gone mad. In order to fight for the opportunities, they have turned that area into a bloody purgatory. General Xie Xian is still missing. The only good news is that many Xiuzha of our empire have sensed the danger and withdrawn from the mulberry forest early. This time, not only our empire, but also the Gold Amber King of the Gold Barbarian branch of the Voodoo Barbarian tribe has been killed by a black vine tree that has stepped into the divine path. In addition, King Thunder Sky of the Thunder Barbarian branch and King Yin Xiong of the Fire Barbarian branch were both seriously injured. Fortunately, they survived and have now retreated to the camp of the Voodoo Barbarians. It is said that they will not have the ability to fight in a short time. As for the death of other strong Voodoo Barbarians, it is also impossible to count. Lin Sun was practicing martial arts every day. However, he also heard the news that came back these days. In addition to sighing and feeling lost, he could not help at all. What on earth is hidden in that mysterious Taoist palace? Why do those horrible creatures that have stepped into the divine path crazily fight for it? More than once, Lin Sun thought about this question. Unfortunately, he couldn't figure it out. For him, the divine path seemed too far away, and he couldn't imagine what kind of opportunity could make those horrible creatures crazy. In order to relieve the depression in his heart, Lin Sun spent all his energy on cultivation. When the catastrophe of the Tao really comes, these horrible creatures that are dormant in the mulberry forest are bound to be unwilling to be lonely. Or the reason why they are dormant is to wait for the arrival of a real great world. Lin Sun had a hunch that the road of struggle for the Tao in the future was destined to become more cruel and fierce than before. Nowadays, only by seizing all the time and opportunities to improve his strength could he have the qualification to stand firm when a great world came. Reincarnation development realm, life and death realm, 9 tribulations of longevity. I still have a long way to go to the divine path, but time is a little tight. After returning from the bloodthirsty battlefield this time, I have to go to the ancient desolation realm in any case. Only there will I be able to find more ways to become stronger, as well as obtain more information regarding the Great Arrow War. Lin Sun secretly made a decision. The storm about the mulberry forest lasted for half a month before it calmed down. Both the Empire and the Voodoo Barbarian tribe suffered heavy losses in this storm, and their morale suffered an unprecedented blow. Now, the mulberry forest seemed to have become a forbidden area that made people pale at the mention of it, and no one dared to approach it. During this half a month, Lin Sun had already thoroughly comprehended and mastered the secret method of the imperial control. The only thing he lacked might be actual combat practice. That night, Lin Sun finally relaxed and planned to gather his friends, Lu Wenting, Huang, Hutong, and Yinfeng. However, when he went to find Hutong, he found that the latter was not in the camp. Boss went out for a mission 3 days ago, and there has been no news from him until now. Abby's voice was low, and her eyebrows were full of sorrow and haze. She looked dazed as if she had lost her soul. Chapter 736. Lin Sun was upset to learn that Hu Tong had been missing for 3 days. Lin Sun had only made a few friends since he entered the bloodthirsty battlefield, and Hu Tong was one of them. Hu Tong's disappearance made Lin Sun lose the mood to party. What mission did he carry out? Lin Sun asked. Abai was startled, and then her eyes lit up with a hint of hope on her pretty face. Are you going to save the boss? Lin Sun nodded. I'll set off tomorrow morning. Abai's eyes suddenly turned red, and she hugged Lin Sun tightly. You must bring the boss back. I'm really afraid that I won't see him again. Lin Sun patted Abai's shoulder without saying anything. Whether Hu Tong was dead or alive, and whether Zhang Sunlai and Lu Winning agreed or not, he would go and see for himself. When Lin Sun returned to his room late at night, he suddenly found that Yin Feng had been waiting for him. A friend of mine just came back from the bloodthirsty battlefield and heard some bad news about you. It said that the Dark Barbarians will send real kings to attack Camp 7 in order to kill you. When he saw Lin Sun, Yin Feng immediately went straight to the point and warned Lin Sun to be careful. Lin Sun was shocked. Until Yin Feng left, he had been thinking that the Dark Barbarians would really send their kings to kill him. It seemed to be making a fuss over nothing. But Lin Sun had to consider the consequences if it really happened. Fine, I'll go and find out for myself tomorrow. The next morning, Lin Sun carried his luggage and left Camp 7 quietly without alerting anyone. At the same time, Lin Sun also wanted to find out some information about the Dark Barbarians. On the day Lin Sun left, a spy returned from the front battlefield and sent back a piece of shocking news. General, it's confirmed that the Ghost Spirit King of the Dark Barbarians and the Green Soul King of the Wood Barbarians will join forces and lead an army to attack our Camp 7. The spy said quickly. Zhang Sunlai's pupils suddenly shrank, and he was about to slap the table, but he held back in the end. He took a deep breath and said, Are they going to start a full-scale war? No, they only have one purpose, which is to kill the 12th child Lin. The spy gave an unexpected answer, and Zhang Sunlai couldn't help but be startled. His face immediately turned ashen. Mobilizing such a large force just to deal with a youth from my empire? That's insane. General, the spy was hesitant. If you have something to say, then say it. Why are you hesitating? Zhang Sunlai berated. The reason why they mobilize so many people this time is that Mr. Lin's influence is too great. Just today, on the blood list wanted notice issued by the Voodoo Barbarian tribe, Mr. Lin's ranking has risen from 18th to 9th. Moreover, the young master of the Dark Barbarian royal family, Inkei, also died at the hands of young Master Lin. Inkei's identity is extremely special, and his death completely infuriated the entire Dark Barbarian race. That Phantom Spirit King even said that if we take the initiative to hand over young Master Lin, they will not attack us. Otherwise, if not what? Zhang Sunlai's expression grew even more ashen. Otherwise, they will not hesitate to pay any price to flatten our camp. Pa Zhangxun Lai couldn't bear it any longer and smashed the table in front of him. He suddenly stood up, and his eyes burst with terrifying cold light. How arrogant you are! Do you really think that I, Zhang Sunlai, am a herbivore? If I can't even protect a little guy, I will be a general in vain. The spy's heart trembled, knowing that Zhang Sunlai was completely enraged. When are those old voodoo barbarians going to court death? Zhang Sunlai asked. 3 days later, the spy replied quickly. On this day, the 7th camp of the Empire was on full alert. Both the Imperial Army of Practitioners and the individual practitioners distributed in the camp received the news that a voodoo barbarian army jointly led by Phantom Spirit King and Green Soul King would attack in 3 days. For a moment, all the practitioners were shocked and nervous. When they learned that the enemy mobilized so many people just to kill Lin Sun, all the practitioners in the 7th camp were dumbfounded. Were the enemies crazy? The 8 camps of the Empire had stood in the bloodthirsty battlefield for thousands of years. They had been tempered by the flames of war and smoke of gunpowder, and had never been breached so far. Now, The two voodoo barbarian kings threatened to destroy the seventh camp if they didn't hand over Lin Sun. How could they not be shocked? For a moment, the atmosphere in the seventh camp was tense and depressing, as if a storm was coming. It was not that everyone was in danger, but it was absolutely a line not to be nervous and worried. After all, there was only one king in the seventh camp, Zhang Sunlai, while the enemy dispatched two kings this time. Moreover, the Phantom Spirit King was the top assassin king in the Dark Barbarians. His prestige was enough to make people pale at the mention of him. Under such circumstances, who could not be nervous and worried? There was no doubt that the seventh camp was destined to set off a bloody storm. Once a battle of such a scale broke out, the consequences were bound to be extremely serious. If it weren't for Lin Shi, how could such a thing happen? In my opinion, for the sake of the overall situation, it may be the wisest choice to send Lin Shi from the seventh camp to other camps as soon as possible. Someone couldn't help complaining. Suddenly, this practitioner suffered from the angry criticism of the crowd. Bullshit. Do you think the enemy will give up attacking the seventh camp if Lin Sun leaves? F***CK your mother. You're actually putting all the blame on Grandmaster Lin. Are you looking to die? Bah, what disgrace. Before long, a team of elite guards appeared and took away the practitioner who complained about Lin Sun. They sent him to the general Zhang Sunlai. After that, this man never appeared again. On the same day, Zhang Sunlai issued a murderous order. In the face of a great war, whoever dares to mislead the people and disturb the morale of the army will be killed. Suddenly, all the practitioners realized that the general would rather fight to the end to protect Lin Sun. As time went by, the atmosphere in the camp became more and more tense and depressing. A storm was brewing. However, on the second day, a king from the Empire Camp No. 1 appeared, which made everyone feel a lot more relaxed. This king was named Qin Shu. He was dressed in a white robe, with a handsome face and a willow beard. He looked elegant and refined. What about Lin Shi? As soon as Qin Shu arrived, he asked to see Lin Sun. Zhang Sunlai was stunned and turned to look at Lu Wenting. Lu Wenting said in a low voice with a bitter face, "He left the camp yesterday morning." Then, he told Lin Sun everything about Hu Tong's disappearance, making it clear that Lin Sun did not run away out of fear of war. This guy escaped the disaster by accident. Zhang Sunlai's face became very strange. It was better that Lin Sun was not in the camp. However, Qin Shu frowned and said unhappily, "Does he think he has not caused enough trouble? Because of him, he has caused such a big storm, which may even set off an all-out war between our empire and the voodoo barbarian tribe. Today, he disobeyed the order and acted alone. It's outrageous." Lu Wenting's face changed. He realized that Qin Shu seemed to have some kind of opinion about Lin Sun. Zhang Sunlai glanced at Qin Shu and said, "It's not the time to discuss these trifles in the face of a great war." Trifles? Qin Shu sighed. There are only 3 months left before the next passage to the empire is opened. If a large-scale war breaks out at this time, our supplies will be greatly affected. Who can bear the consequences? Zhang Sunlai's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he said, "There's still 3 months of time. It's still a bit too early to speak of all this. Not to mention that if we blame a young man because of the enemy's so-called large-scale attack, then it would seem to be very inappropriate." I didn't say that. I just don't want any more accidents to happen during this period. Qin Shu flicked his nails and said casually, "But it is obvious that Lin Shi is a troublemaker, which makes me have some opinions about him." Zhang Sunlai was a little angry. "Let's fight this fierce battle first, and then talk about these things." However, what Zhang Sunlai did not expect was that the enemy came 1 day in advance. Woo woo. Woo, the vast horn sounded from the distant horizon, echoing between heaven and earth. Soon, densely packed figures emerged like a tide, like an overwhelming black wave, spreading towards Camp 7. That was the voodoo barbarian army, with tens of thousands of people. All of them were armed with weapons and full of murderous intent. When they gathered together, the terrible murderous intent seemed to be real, soaring into the sky and disturbing the universe. In an instant, the entire Camp 7 was alarmed, and the practitioners of the Empire were a little unprepared. They did not expect that the enemy would come one day in advance. "Get ready to fight." Roars sounded one after another. "Brothers, the voodoo barbarian bastards dare to come here to die. It's time for us to harvest military merits. Are you ready?" Heroic and impassioned shouts also came from all over the camp. The entire Camp 7, like a long-prepared fierce beast, was awakened and showed its ferocious fangs. Wei Yuan battleship, soaring Eagle battleship, Ziying battleship, and other densely packed battleships rose in a roar. This was already a war, not a scattered individual battle. For a moment, the wind and clouds in this area were surging, and the murderous intent was like smoke rising to the sky. The horrible airflow was raging silently, rendering the world extremely solemn. Zhang Sunlai and Qin Chu, the two kings, rose into the air, looking at the army of voodoo barbarians in the distance calmly. Although the enemy had appeared a day ahead of time, as experienced kings, they were not surprised or surprised. The art of war is the art of deception. Such small accidents were all too common. However, very quickly, Zhang Sunlai and Qin Chu's expressions changed slightly. Their original composure were also affected, and their expressions became grave and gloomy, which was rare for them. There were actually 4 barbarian kings in the enemy army. This was completely different from what the information said about the 2 kings attacking. P.S. Today is New Year's Eve. Together with the protagonist Lin Sun and the auspicious beast Old Toad, I wish everyone a happy new year, a prosperous source of wealth, good food, and a happy family. Chapter 737. Rise from insignificance. Chapter 728. Suddenly show up the next chapter. Damn voodoo barbarian bastards. How could they be so insidious and treacherous? Zhang Sunlai gnashed his teeth, his eyes glowing with a frightening luster. Qin Chu next to him also lost his elegant demeanor and looked a little flustered and exasperated. He said angrily, "See? This is the trouble caused by that guy. Are you afraid?" Zhang Sunlai was furious. How could this guy say such words at such a critical moment? It's not a matter of fear, but a matter of life and death of a camp of the Empire. Qin Chu scolded. Zhang Sunlai didn't bother to care about it anymore. In the face of the war, if these disputes happened again, it would definitely disturb the army's morale. No, the enemy has 4 barbarian kings. In the camp, some sharp-eyed practitioners also found it and cried out involuntarily. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Suddenly, the aggressive imperial practitioners, who were ready to fight, all held their breath and showed signs of disorder. This discovery was like a blow to the head, bringing a heavy blow to the morale of all the practitioners in the 7th camp. For barbarian kings attacked together. This power was so horrible that almost no hope of victory could be seen. The atmosphere in the camp suddenly seemed to be frozen and became extremely depressed. Every practitioner's face was cloudy and their emotions fluctuated. What are you afraid of? Our 7th camp has been established for thousands of years and experienced many storms. Things more dangerous than this have happened before. Zhang Sunlai shouted with a thunderous voice. Spiritual tattooists of the Ordnance Department, get ready. When necessary, open the 8-level Holy Formation. 8-level Holy Formation. When these words came out, many of the older generation cultivators relaxed inwardly. Thousands of years ago, in order to fight against the voodoo barbarian tribe, the founding emperor specially invited a spiritual tattooist from the ancient Desolation realm to the bloodthirsty battlefield to set up a defensive formation for each of the 8 camps of the empire. Each formation was branded with the mysterious patterns of the Holy Path and had the power to shock the world and make ghosts cry. Especially when in the most dangerous situation, the 8 formations could cooperate with each other to form a large formation group. However, because the power needed to open such a formation was too great, the empire would not easily open it unless it was a critical moment. Obviously, the current situation could already be considered to be dangerous and grim, and that was the reason why Zhang Sanlai would give such an order. Knowing this, the tense and uneasy atmosphere in the camp eased up a lot, and the Imperial practitioners regained their composure. Only Qin Chu was frowning. He lowered his voice and said, "The resources we have now are only enough to last until the next time the passageway opens. If we activate the 8 extreme sacred formation now, the remaining resources will be used up in less than 10 days. If the resources are gone, I'm sure you know the severity of the consequences better than me. There's no other way. With the enemy at the gates, we can only fight. How can we care about the future?" Chang Sunlight took a deep breath and said, "Of course, it depends on the situation. I like to see whether these barbarian bastards dare to start this war or not." In the distance, the army was pressing, and the dense voodoo barbarians were like tides. They stopped when they were thousands of feet away from the camp. They were full of killing intent. Although they didn't move forward, their killing intent still changed the weather, and the atmosphere became extremely oppressive, making it hard for people to breathe. In this chilling atmosphere, Zhang Sanlai laughed up to the sky. He stepped into the void, majestic and proud, and shouted, "I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be the Ghost Spirit King, Green Soul King, Calming Mountain King, and Bai Tsang King. What's wrong with you 4 old bastards? Are you tired of living? Do you want to die?" His voice was like a thunderclap, rumbling in the wilderness. On the side of the voodoo barbarian army, an old man stepped out. He was like a shadow, covered in gray mist, mysterious like a ghost. "Zhang Sunlai, I'm not here to quarrel with you. I think you already know why we're here. Hand over Lin Shi, and we'll leave immediately. We won't encroach on an inch of your camp. Otherwise, don't blame us for wiping this place out." The old man was the Ghost Spirit King. His voice was cold and gloomy, drifting between heaven and earth, with a piercing coldness that made people uncomfortable. He was a king, and a king proficient in the art of assassination. His ferocious name had spread across the bloodthirsty battlefield a long time ago. Lin Shi. Sure enough, this large-scale war that was about to break out was just for the sake of young Master Lin. In Camp 7, the practitioners of the Empire were completely enlightened, but at the same time, they were shocked. Young Master Lin had only been in the bloodthirsty battlefield for a short time, but his influence was already so great that the enemy would not hesitate to start a war to kill him. "Ha ha, you're really arrogant. Do you really think that you can do whatever you want with 4 kings and force me to bow my head?" Zhang Sunlai laughed, but his face was extremely cold. "In your dreams, as long as I'm here, I won't frown even if you start a full-scale war, let alone the few of you." However, the Ghost Spirit King was unmoved. He said leisurely, "I admit that with the 8 Supreme Holy Formation, it's indeed difficult to wipe out everything here. However, as far as I know, you don't have many resources left. If you activate the 8 Supreme Holy Formation just for a young man, I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on until the next time you get supplies from the Empire." As soon as these words came out, many practitioners in Camp 7 changed their expression slightly, and Zhang Sunlai also narrowed his eyes. Only then did he realize that the enemy had come prepared this time. "This isn't good. They've already figured out the situation on our side." Qin Chu's face was gloomy. His eyes flickered as he transmitted his voice. "Didn't you say that Lin Shi is not in the camp now? Why don't we take a compromise and tell them the truth and lure them to deal with Lin's son? In this way, we can buy some time for us to ask for more help from the other camps." "Enough." Zhang Sunlai was instantly enraged. "I can't do such a dirty thing." "You?" Qin Chu's face darkened. "If you're afraid, get out of here." Zhang Sunlai scolded. He was increasingly displeased with Qin Chu. If it weren't for the enemy's army, he would have beaten him up. What compromise? It was obvious that Qin Chu wanted to direct all the trouble to Lin Shi alone. Zhang Sunlai would never do such a shameless thing. Fine. I'd like to see how you're going to solve the current predicament." Qin Chu was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. Zhang Sunlai snorted and ignored him. "Zhang Sunlai, what do you think? If we really start this war, although there will be some casualties, it will be enough to force you to activate the 8-level Holy Formation. At that time, we can totally withdraw. But if you don't have enough supplies, I'm afraid the consequences are not something you can bear. The Phantom Spirit King spoke again, as if he had everything planned out and was sure of victory. In Camp 7, a group of practitioners looked at each other with gloomy expressions. This embarrassing situation, where they could neither advance nor retreat, was completely beyond their expectation. They were somewhat at a loss. There's no need to think about it. If you want to fight, then fight. If not, then get out of here. Zhang Sunlai scolded without hesitation. Ha ha. In that case, don't blame us for being rude. But to be honest, we didn't intend to be kind this time. The Phantom Spirit King laughed, and his aura soared into the sky. It was eerie and terrifying. I've said that this is the best time to beat them when they are down. They are short of supplies and dare not start a real large-scale war. A green figure appeared, with mysterious totem tattoos all over his body. He was the Green Soul King from the Wood Barbarian branch. It's useless to say more. Let's do it. I haven't seen the power of the 8-level holy formation for a long time. This time, I like to see whether the Camp 7 can stop us. King Ningyu also appeared. His figure was like a mountain, with a sense of unshakable majesty. Let's hurry up. I don't want to wait for the experts from other camps of the Empire to come to the rescue. If we can take this opportunity to take the head of Zhang Sunlai, I'll be very satisfied. In the rolling waves, a slender figure was condensed, with green eyes and a solemn and dignified look. It was King Bai Tsang of the Water Barbarian branch. Kill! The Voodoo Barbarian army, which was ready for battle, roared in unison, shaking the clouds in all directions. The horrible killing intent instantly shrouded the area. In the Camp 7, the practitioners of the Empire all looked dignified and ready for battle. A group of spiritual tattooists all looked at Zhang Sunlai, wondering whether to open the 8-level holy formation at this time. Don't forget, the consequences are very serious. Even Qin Chu beside him couldn't help saying. Zhang Sunlai fell into a rare silence. But in the end, he suddenly gritted his teeth, and a touch of determination burst out of his eyes. If I can't even protect a young man of my empire today, I'd better kill myself. His voice was sonorous and unquestionable. Fight! The practitioners of the Empire were also influenced by him and became hot-blooded. Who wouldn't be angry when being bullied by the enemy in front of their home? The men of the Empire had never been afraid of fighting. Then fight! Zhang Sunlai waved his hand and was about to order to open the 8-level holy formation. But at this time, a figure suddenly rose into the air and came to Zhang Sunlai's side. I'm willing to help you with my bow and arrows. That figure was Lin Sun, who had returned to the camp at some time. Seeing Lin Sun, the practitioners of the Empire were all moved, while Qin Chu was stunned. He didn't expect that the young man didn't hide at such a dangerous time, but took the initiative to show up. On the side of the Voodoo Barbarian army, the 4 kings, including the Ghost Spirit King, showed their burning, killing intent. Their goal this time was to kill this young man. At this moment, even Zhang Sunlai was slightly stunned. General catch! Lin Sun took out the insignificance bow and the blue sky arrow and handed them to Zhang Sunlai. Buzz! The insignificance bow, which was made of white bones and skeletons, seemed to feel the chilling atmosphere in the field and made a longing quiver. Chapter 738. A mysterious big bow made of white bones and a divine arrow that exuded a boundless aura immediately attracted the attention of everyone as soon as they appeared. Now, both the Empire and the Voodoo Barbarians had heard too much about Lin Sun's brilliant achievements. And in these achievements, there were all kinds of speculations and rumors about the mysterious white bone bow and the black divine arrow. Because in their opinion, it was this pair of bows and arrows that allowed Lin Sun, who was only at the Tao Insight realm, to have the incredible feat of killing a half-step king across realms. This is a pair of complete ancient secret treasures. Its origin is unknown. It may be passed down from a saint. This was the speculation of most strong masters, which was amazing and attractive. Therefore, when Lin Sun took out this pair of mysterious bows and arrows at this time, All the people present were attracted to them. "What a treasure!" Zhang Sunlai exclaimed. As he opened and closed his eyes, strands of divine light bloomed. He could keenly feel the mystery and horror of this pair of bows and arrows, which made his heart tremble. In the distance, King of Devious Spirits, King of Green Soul, King of Ningyue, and King of Azure slightly narrowed their eyes and looked a little dignified. Although they were very far away, with their cultivation, they could easily perceive the aura of the insignificant spiritual bow and arrow of azure sky. It was terrifying. This was their intuition. When they thought that this pair of bows and arrows had easily killed a half-step king, even they had to treat it with caution. The black divine arrow was lost in the depths of Tiger Valley. "It should have belonged to us," King of Devious Spirits murmured. The spectral king muttered with a burning gaze in his eyes. "This time, perhaps we should go all out and seize this pair of treasures. Yes, their aura is extremely obscure and terrifying. Although I can't feel the aura of holy treasures for the time being, my intuition tells me that even if they're not holy treasures, they're definitely not inferior to holy treasures." A touch of greed surged in the hearts of King of Green Soul and the other three kings. Even they didn't have such heaven-defying treasures. How could they not be tempted? But immediately, they became vigilant because at this time, Zhang Sunlai had taken the big bow, pulled the bowstring fully, and pointed it at them. Buzz! When the blood-red bowstring was fully drawn, mysterious and terrifying phenomena appeared around the bow. Wind and thunder rumbled. Gods and devils roared. The stars exploded. The myriad of Daos collapsed. The sun fell from the sky, and the golden crow cried in the blue ocean. An indescribably terrifying aura swept out, causing the heavens and the earth to fall silent. Suppression. The void seemed to be unable to bear it, and collapsed silently. The army of voodoo barbarians in the distance was even more frightened at this moment. Their blood was frozen, and they were about to suffocate and collapse. Not good. The expressions of the King of Spirits and the others changed. They also felt the bone-piercing, killing intent. It was too terrifying, and it made them feel as if there was a blade on their backs, making their hair stand on end. And this was merely the power of a fully drawn bow. Zhang Sunlai stood tall in the void with the bowstring fully drawn. He was like an ancient god descending to the world. His arrogant and heroic appearance shocked all the cultivators of the empire. Even Lin Sun was surprised. The power of the insignificant spiritual bow at this moment was obviously many times stronger than when it was in his hands. Is this the real power of the insignificant spiritual bow? Lin Sun murmured in his heart. This is definitely a pair of supreme treasures passed down from ancient times. It has been stained with countless blood. The murderous intent is so strong that it can disturb the yin and yang of the universe. Qin Chu's heart pounded violently, and his eyes widened with an imperceptible heat. Such a treasure falling into the hands of Lin Shire was simply like a pearl covered in dust. Do it! In the distance, there was a violent roar. King of Green Soul was the first to feel that something was wrong. He attacked fiercely. He took out a halberd made of animal bones and slashed it in the air at Zhang Sunlai. Boom! This halberd was obviously not an ordinary treasure. It was more than 3 meters long. As it soared into the air, layers of strange totems appeared, and ancient spells resounded through the world. The void collapsed, and the world seemed to be torn in half. It was so horrible that the power of a real king was vividly displayed. Lin Sun's hands and feet were cold. He had no doubt that if he faced this blow, he would be crushed to death in an instant without any strength to fight back. This was the power of a king. Bang! Almost at the same time, Zhang Sunlai also shot out the sky arrow. It was as if it was unparalleled. With an extremely fierce and almost invincible terrifying power, it suddenly appeared in the world. It was too fast. It was too horrible. Some cultivators' eyes were stinging, and their minds were shaking. They couldn't see clearly or perceive it at all. With an earth-shattering bang, the halberd of white bone was shaken and flew backward with an ear-piercing whine. A large part of the blade of the halberd was broken. Oh no! In the distance, Green Soul King was so shocked that he almost jumped up. He was extremely afraid of the pair of bows and arrows, which was why he took action in advance. Only now did he realize that he still underestimated the terror of this pair of treasures. He wanted to dodge, but a black stream of light flashed, and his body was directly blasted into two halves. His flesh and blood exploded, turning into scarlet blood rain that scattered in the void. A King Realm expert couldn't dodge in time and was killed. When they saw this scene, the Spirit King, Ningyu King, and Azure King, who wanted to help, were also shocked. They felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Just what kind of terrifying treasure was this to be able to kill a King Realm expert in an instant? Their faces changed drastically, and a chill ran down their spines. They were almost scared out of their wits. The atmosphere was dead silent. Both the Imperial cultivators and the voodoo barbarians fell into a daze. One arrow killed a king. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to imagine such a shocking power. It was so shocking that they almost broke their guts. Sure enough, the true power of the insignificant spiritual bow and azure arrow has never been displayed by me. Lin Sun was also a little shocked. The insignificant spiritual bow and azure arrow were originally his treasures, but until now, he hadn't been able to fully control them. It was also at this time that they fell into Zhang Sun Lai's hands that Lin Sun saw the true power of this pair of treasures. They were absolutely peerless, murderous weapons, and their sharpness was invincible. Next to him, Qin Chu was shocked and absent-minded. His eyes seemed to be glued to the insignificant spiritual bow, and he could no longer move them away. It was too strong. If he had this pair of treasures in hand, where could he not show off his power? There was dead silence in the field. Zhang Sun Lai didn't remain silent and continued to kill. Others couldn't see it, but he was secretly complaining in his heart. Even though this pair of bows and arrows were so ferocious that even he was deeply shocked, at the same time, it had almost exhausted all of his strength. General is mighty. All of a sudden, some practitioners shouted excitedly. Soon, the whole Camp 7 was filled with exhilarating shouts. Who in the whole bloodthirsty battlefield could compete with such divine power to kill a king with one arrow? On the other hand, the morale of the voodoo barbarian army suffered an unprecedented blow. They were all anxious and uneasy. It was too terrible. Originally, they were aggressive and well-prepared, and they didn't take the Imperial practitioners seriously at all. But Zhang Sun Lai's arrow was like a giant hammer, which hit their hearts hard and almost made their fighting spirit collapse. Not only them, but also King of Spirits, King of Ningyue, and King of Azure changed their expressions, and a chill came from the soles of their feet. The scene just happened in front of them, but they had no time to stop it. None of them dared to imagine if they would have been able to block the arrow if it had been aimed at them. It's not too late to get out of here. Zhang Sun Lai took a deep breath and said. Lin Sun was stunned and immediately realized that the arrow just now almost drained all of Zhang Sun Lai's strength. It seems that you can't shoot a second arrow. King of Spirits also seemed to see this and said with a gloomy face. He was not willing to retreat. They came with so many people, but a king was killed by an arrow. In the end, they were so scared that they had to go back. If this news spread out, it would be a great loss of face. You're right. Zhang Sun Lai looked very frank. But don't forget that I have a king with me. I just need to hand over the bow and arrow to him, and then he can kill one of you. As soon as he said this, King of Spirits and others changed their expressions. Or do you decide to continue to fight with us at the cost of another life? Zhang Sun Lai's face was cold. That's good. I just need to open the 8-level holy formation and hold on until my strength recovers, and then I will have the power to kill you one by one. King of Spirits and others were silent. No matter who it was, they didn't want to joke with their lives. Moreover, they had to admit that Zhang Sun Lai's calculation was very accurate. They didn't dare to act rashly again, but it would be too sullen and humiliating to let them go back in embarrassment like this. The Imperial practitioners were cheering and shouting, and their morale was high. No one expected that the situation would be completely reversed by the appearance of a pair of bows and arrows before the fierce battle broke out. It was like a dream, and all this was brought by Lin Sun, which made them look at Lin Sun with more fanaticism and admiration. "Let me do it." Qin Shu took the initiative to volunteer, eager to have a try. His eyes were fanatical, and he couldn't wait to grab the pair of bows and arrows from Zhang Sunlai and try it himself. However, before Zhang Sunlai agreed, King of Spirits and others in the distance had already made a decision. Retreat. They retreated with a livid face, with endless anger and resentment. This was the safest decision, but undoubtedly, it was also the most shameful one. It was a great shame that such a result happened when the army was pressing on the border, which made them all depressed and ashamed. Boom! Soon, the voodoo barbarian army retreated like a tide and disappeared into the horizon in the distance. Witnessing this scene, there was silence in the number 7 camp of the Empire. All the practitioners were in a trance, as if they still couldn't believe it. The enemy army, commanded by the 4 barbarian kings, retreated just like that. Originally, according to the normal track, a fierce large-scale war was destined to take place, but the situation was reversed and deviated, so that all this ended hastily before it happened. And what caused all this was the pair of bows and arrows in Lin Sun's hands. He killed the king with 1 arrow and shocked the enemy with 1 arrow, making them flee in fear. This was the real end of the world with 1 arrow. Chapter 739. At night, in the 7th camp, in a brightly lit palace hall, a banquet was being held in full swing. It's really fun today. Brother Zhang Sun killed the king with 1 arrow, scared off the enemy army, and made them flee like stray dogs. Such a grand occasion is really an eye-opener for me. Qin Shu laughed and proposed a toast to Zhang Sunlai. The dangerous situation during the day had been resolved. The enemy retreated in panic, which completely removed the threat to the 7th camp. Therefore, on this night, the whole 7th camp fell into a carnival. Not only this hall, but also other places were celebrating. Child Lin is also amazing. With a secret weapon, you stood up at the critical moment and provided Brother Zhang Sun with the opportunity to reverse the situation. Come on, I also propose a toast to you. While speaking, Qin Shu raised another glass of wine and looked at Lin Sun with a smile. Senior, you flatter me. Lin Sun drank up. The atmosphere was harmonious, but Lu Winning didn't seem to like Qin Shu. He secretly transmitted a message to Lin Sun. Boy, don't be confused by the enthusiasm of this old guy. When he came to the camp before, he had a lot of opinions about you. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and secretly transmitted a message to Lu. Oh, what do you mean? Lu Winting said, I'm not telling lies. It's just that Qin Shu's face is too ugly. You don't know how bad his attitude was before. As soon as he arrived at the camp, he accused you of making too much trouble. It's you who made too much trouble these days that caused today's war. Later on, when he saw the enemy's army bearing down on us, he even came up with a rotten idea. He wanted to divert this calamity onto you alone. Fortunately, General Zhang Sun firmly refused at that time. Otherwise, before he finished speaking, the meaning had been fully expressed. Lin Sun narrowed his black eyes and looked as calm as before, but his eyes had become much colder when he looked at Qin Shu. Sure enough, you can't judge a book by its cover. However, it's a small matter. You don't have to make it public. Anyway, Qin Shu is a king after all. It's not good to provoke him. Lu Winning was worried that Lin Sun would lose his cool, so he reminded him. Lin Sun nodded. However, when the banquet was about to end, Qin Shu suddenly coughed and said with a serious look, there are less than 3 months left before the next opening of the road to the Empire. The enemy is ready to take advantage of this opportunity to start a war. As you all know, we don't have much supplies left in the 8 camps of the Empire. If the enemy start a large-scale war at this time, it will definitely be a serious crisis for us. Zhang Sunlai nodded. That's right. What happened today is a proof of that. Our resources are limited, so we cannot easily activate the 8 extreme holy array. It is precisely because of this that the enemy dared to muster such a large force to attack us. Qin Chu smiled and looked at Lin's son. So I want to ask Child Lin for a favor. If you agree, you may be able to help our empire solve the problem in front of us, so that the practitioners in the 8 camps of our empire can hold on safely until the next opening of the same path. Seeing this, Zhang Sunlai frowned imperceptibly and realized that something was wrong. Lu Winning winked at Lin's son, as if telling him to be cautious and not to rush to agree. Oh, senior, please tell me. Lin's son looked calm. Qin Chu looked solemn and said solemnly, I want to borrow Child Lin's bow and arrows. With the power of this pair of peerless treasures, it is enough to deter the old monsters in the voodoo barbarian tribe and make them not dare to act rashly. It turned out to be this after so many twists and turns. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with a touch of coldness. He was finally sure that what Lu Winning said might be true. The reason why Qin Chu was so enthusiastic to him at the banquet today was probably to make this request at this moment. Before Lin Sun spoke, Zhang Sunlai frowned and questioned, I'm afraid this is inappropriate. How can such treasures be lent out easily? Qin Chu said righteously, Brother Zhang Sun, I'm doing this for the sake of the cultivators in the 8 camps of our empire. I believe that if the generals in the other camps knew about this, they would definitely hope that young Master Lin can help us. After a pause, he continued, What's more, it's just a loan. When the passage to the empire is opened 3 months later, this pair of treasures will be returned to us as they are. I wonder if Child Lin can temporarily give up your treasures for the sake of the overall situation of our empire? He looked at Lin's son. He looked like he cared about the practitioners of the empire and considered the overall situation. He put on a righteous and sonorous voice, which made Zhang Sunlai somewhat unable to refute. But Zhang Sunlai knew that this guy could never be so selfless. If Lin Sun really lent out the pair of bows and arrows, there would be too many variables in the future. As the saying went, treasures could move people's hearts, let alone such an incredible treasure. Even Zhang Sunlai himself was extremely moved. Judging others by his own judgment, he was certain that even if it was a life and death king, facing this pair of bows and arrows, he would probably have many thoughts that he shouldn't have. But if he lent it to Qin Chu, there might really be an unforeseen event of no return. Sorry, I can't help you with this. To Zhang Sunlai's surprise, Lin Sun didn't have a trace of embarrassment at all and directly refused. This guy is really bold. Zhang Sunlai praised inwardly. However, this caught Qin Chu off guard, and his expression immediately became somewhat unsightly as he said in a deep voice, Young Master Lin, this matter concerns the safety of an entire 8 camps of the empire. As a cultivator of the empire, how can you remain indifferent? This was using righteousness to pressure Lin Sun. Lin Sun suddenly felt an unspeakable disgust in his heart. This old guy was too abominable. It was obviously Lin Sun who coveted his treasures, but he used the righteousness of the empire to talk about it. He was simply shameless. Lin Sun smiled coldly. Without my help, the 8 camps of the empire can't survive? For thousands of years, the reason why the empire has been able to fight on the bloodthirsty battlefield to this day is probably not because of the treasures in my hands, right? If it were other practitioners facing the request of a king, no matter how sullen they were in their hearts, they would probably have to yield. But Lin Sun didn't, which made Qin Chu feel more and more ashamed. He was a little annoyed, and his attitude became rude. Child Lin, you are too selfish. If this spreads out, I'm afraid all the practitioners of the empire will be bitterly disappointed. Qin Chu, you are too much. The treasures are his own. Why should he lend them out? Zhang Sunlai couldn't stand it anymore and shouted. The lively and harmonious atmosphere in the banquet was gone, and it became a little depressed and tense. However, Qin Chu stood up with a serious expression, and his eyes were like lightning. He said coldly, Why? Because this matter concerns the safety of the 8 camps of the empire. You, Zhang Sunlai, can be indifferent, but I can't. Today, I'd rather offend you, but I must do this properly. Zhang Sunlai also slapped the table and stood up. He was so angry that he laughed. Are you going to rob us? No, I'm just using my own methods to make young Master Lin help our empire. Even the imperial court couldn't listen to this anymore. This is obviously nonsense and nonsense. Even an idiot would know that this is blatant lying. But Lin Sun seemed to believe it. He clapped and praised. Senior, you are really bold. In this case, why don't we make a written agreement? I will lend the treasures in my hands, and you promise that when the passage to the empire opens in 3 months, you will take out all the wealth and power of your Qin family and invest it in the bloodthirsty battlefield. What do you think? Of course, Qin Shu was about to agree. He thought that it was just a written agreement, which couldn't bind him and the Qin family behind him at all. But immediately, he felt that something was wrong. At this moment, Zhang Sunlai was very calm and didn't have any intention of stopping him. He even seemed to be eager for him to do so. This was too abnormal. Qin Shu changed the topic and said, "This matter can be discussed in detail later. Now, I just want to ask, is Child Lin still unwilling to help?" The cold light in his eyes flowed with threat. It seemed that as long as Lin Sun said no, he would immediately take action. Zhang Sunlai sighed and said, "If you sign this agreement, I would be very happy to help. Unfortunately, you don't dare to. This only proves that all the righteousness you just said is a King Bullsh T excuse." Chapter 740. Zhang Sunlai's resolute attitude moved Lin Sun and made him feel warm in his heart. Since he stepped into the empire, he had never lacked enemies along the way. Similarly, he had never lacked friends, such as Drillmaster Young Ku, Mr. Vulture, Zhu Laosan, Ning Ming, sure you like Old Toad, Zhao Talai, Shen Tao, in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Zhang Sunlai might have scolded him more than once, but Lin Sun knew that this general had never regarded him as an outsider. Just like today's war storm, if it was any other selfish big shot, they would probably put the overall situation first and sacrifice themselves. But Zhang Sunlai didn't. Just like at this moment, in the face of Qin Shu's hypocritical and ugly face, Zhang Sunlai could also stand by and watch, but he didn't do so. How could Lin Sun not be moved? At this moment, Qin Shu's face was gloomy. He was silent for a while and suddenly said, "Brother Zhang Sun, today's arrow has consumed a lot of your physical strength. If you choose to fight now, I'm afraid you can't stop me at all. What if I fight with my life?" Zhang Sunlai said coldly. Qin Shu's face changed slightly, and he said, "You should know that I do this for the imperial court." What's more, he wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. But Qin Shu, as the person involved, had a different look at the moment. Chapter 741. If it was someone else who dared to do this to him, Qin Shu would have slapped that person to death. That person must be tired of living. After all, Qin Shu was still a king-level figure. In the whole world, he could be regarded as a monstrous existence at the peak. But now, in the face of Zhao Xingye's mockery, he didn't dare to be angry at all. This woman was too terrifying. Not only was her identity too respected, but her strength could also be regarded as an outstanding figure among the kings. Qin Shu had no doubt that if he dared to show any dissatisfaction, the consequences would be worse than death. Qin Shu felt so wronged that he was about to vomit blood. His face turned green, and he couldn't speak for a long time. His embarrassed appearance made Lin Sun and Zhang Sunlai laugh secretly. "General Zhao, you're not joking, are you?" After holding in for a long time, Qin Shu said embarrassedly with an embarrassed face. Zhao Xingye raised a pair of straight black eyebrows, slightly pursed her red lips, and said unhappily, "General Qin Shu, I just bowed to you on behalf of the empire. Do you think I'm joking?" Her voice was still soft, but it was like a sharp sword against his throat. It made Qin Shu's body stiffen, and his face changed again. In the end, Qin Shu gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, "General Zhao, you worry too much. Since I have said this, I will try my best to fulfill it. However, this matter is of great importance, and I can't make the decision for the Qin family alone. When I return to the empire, I will discuss with the clan as soon as possible and solve this matter appropriately." His face was livid. Everyone knew that he was so angry and sullen that he was about to go berserk. Seeing this, Zhao Xingye immediately nodded happily. That couldn't be better. Then I wish General Qin Chu success in advance. Qin Chu left with a chest full of depression and discomfort. He was worried that if he didn't leave, he would vomit blood and die of anger, thinking that he only borrowed a pair of bows and arrows this time. But he got himself into trouble and went for wool and came home shorn. Qin Chu was so angry that he wanted to slap himself twice. Damn it, General Zhao. Thank you for solving the problem for us. Within the hall, Zhang Sunlai withdrew his smile and bowed seriously. If Zhao Xingye hadn't arrived tonight, then the consequences would have been slightly unpredictable. You're welcome. I'm glad that General Qin Chu is dedicated to the public. Rather than saying that you've solved a problem, it's more like you've facilitated a wonderful event. Zhao Xingye's words were casual. She sat there casually. Her beauty could topple a city. Her black eyes were bright, and her skin was as white as snow. It was hard to imagine how such a beautiful woman could be called bloodthirsty queen. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, it would be hard for Lin Sun to imagine that a life-death realm king like Qin Chu dared not even fart in the face of Zhao Xingye's difficulties. Perhaps this was the true power of great power. General Zhao, do you really think that the Qin family will fulfill this promise? Zhang Sunlai was surprised. However, Zhao Xingye smiled slightly, and his fiery lips curled into a disdainful arc. If they dare to do so, then don't blame me for personally going to their door to ask for it. Now, Lin and Zhang Sunlai finally believed that Zhao Xingye was not joking. The heavens were planning to ruthlessly rip off the Qin family. Lin Sun gasped and felt a little strange in his heart. In the past, he was always regarded as bold and strong, but compared with Zhao Xingye, this beautiful and terrible woman, he was nothing. Zhang Sunlai couldn't help glancing at Lin Sun, as if secretly comparing Lin Sun with Zhao Xingye to see who was bolder. Surprised? Zhao Xingye smiled. She flicked her nails and said, as if it was a matter of course, "Don't forget that I'm also a woman, and women are best at pestering and seeking revenge for the smallest grievance." Zhang Sunlai chuckled, gloating in his heart. He felt some sympathy and pity for Qin Chu. If this guy knew this, would he cry? Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Women? Who really dared to treat a general with the title of bloodthirsty queen as an ordinary woman? Little guy, can you lend me your bow and arrows? Suddenly, Zhao Xingye looked at Lin Sun with a pair of beautiful eyes and made a request. This made Zhang Sunlai's eyes suddenly narrow, a little startled and surprised. Zhao Xingye, however, looked calm and indifferent. She looked at Lin Sun quietly and did not exert any pressure. Okay. Lin Sun was silent for a moment, facing Zhao Xingye's eyes calmly, and said, "However, I have a condition." Zhang Sunlai was so shocked that he almost covered Lin Sun's mouth. How dare he talk about conditions with Zhao Xingye at this time? This kid was simply audacious to the extreme. Zhao Xingye's dark and bright, beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and the corners of her mouth rose slightly. She said with a faint smile, "Oh, tell me, if you go to the Qin family in person one day to ask for an explanation, please take me with you. I just want to have a look, that's all." Lin Sun said an unexpected condition, which made Zhang Sunlai slightly stunned and surprised. What was this guy doing? He even wanted to get involved in this kind of thing? Zhao Xingye burst into laughter, and her beautiful eyes were full of strange color. She stared at Lin Sun with a smile and looked him up and down, as if to get to know him again. After a while, she nodded. Okay. Lin Sun also smiled and handed over Insignificant's bow and arrow of blue sky without hesitation. "I will return them to you in 10 days at most." This was Zhao Xingye's promise. It was late at night, and Lin Sun left soon. Sure enough, this guy is also a black-hearted master. With his deep shrewdness in mind, whoever provokes him will have a headache in the future. Zhao Xingye's white and slender hand gently stroked the Insignificant's bow in her hand. A pair of beautiful eyes looked in the direction of Lin Sun's departure, and there was a faint curve at the corner of her mouth. Black-hearted? I think this guy is really bold. Zhang Sunlai couldn't help sighing when he thought of some things Lin Sun had done these days. Immediately, he frowned and said, "However, according to his character, I'm surprised that he lent this pair of treasures so readily this time." Zhao Xingye squinted at him. "Do you think I took advantage of him?" Without waiting for an answer, Zhao Xingye smiled playfully and said, "If it wasn't for the fact that I need this pair of weapons to do something, I really wouldn't agree to his condition." Chang Sun Lai was stunned, and he pondered carefully for a moment before coming to a sudden understanding, and he slapped his thigh. So that's how it is. This kid is really treacherous enough. The situation was actually very simple. Although Zhao Xingye had forced Qin Shu to comply with his promise, Qin Shu had no choice but to follow through on his promise. However, everyone knew that it was impossible for the Qin clan, one of the 7 upper-class clans of the empire, to devote all of its wealth and power to the empire, because this was simply no different than destroying the Qin clan, and even the current emperor probably wouldn't dare to do this rashly. After all, the Qin clan was one of the high-level clans in the end. They possessed enormous resources and power, and their influence in the empire was too great. If they were driven to desperation, then it would absolutely cause an unpredictable upheaval and calamity. Under such circumstances, the conditions put forward by Lin Sun were thought-provoking. He proposed to go to the Qin clan with Zhao Xingye to see how Zhao Xingye would ask for some explanation, which would invisibly affect Zhao Xingye's actions, making Zhao Xingye have to think twice even if he wanted to change his mind. At that time, if I don't take advantage of the Qin clan, I'll be looked down upon by this kid, and I will feel sorry for the help he lent me. But if I go, I'll be playing right into this brat's hands and following his heart. This is actually no different from using a borrowed knife to kill someone. It's just that this brat's intentions are very obscure and untraceable. This makes it very difficult for me to catch him. There was a trace of emotion on Zhao Xingye's beautiful and charming face. This means is really amazing. Not to mention his current cultivation and resources, he is good at using others to kill with a borrowed knife at such a young age. Very few people among his peers can compare with him. If such a black-hearted and extremely talented little monster grows up completely in the future, who will dare to provoke him? Zhang Sunlai was stunned. He really hadn't thought about this, but after thinking about it carefully, he found that what Zhao Xingye said was absolutely not exaggerated, and even pointed out some characteristics that the kid possessed on the first prick. Fortunately, even if he rises completely, he will not be the enemy of the empire. Otherwise, this little guy will definitely become a peerless hero and bring disaster to the world. As Zhao Xingye said this, she had already stood up. Her black crane cloak outlined a soul-stirring, graceful curve of her slender figure. Although Qin Shu's character is a bit unbearable, his words are not wrong. The resources left in the 8 camps of the empire are limited. Under such circumstances, the period before the next passage to the empire is opened will undoubtedly be the most difficult. There was a hint of contemplation between her white and smooth brows, just like the storm that happened today. The Sly Spirit King and the others led an army here. It seemed like their goal was to deal with that brat, but in reality, they just wanted to use this opportunity to start a large-scale war. Yes, if they use all their forces to fight during this period, the consequences will indeed be very serious. Zhang Sunlai frowned. As the leader of Camp Number 7, he naturally knew the seriousness of the current situation better than others. So, in order to resolve this crisis, the only way is to play a big game for them first. Zhao Xingye picked up the insignificant bow in her hand, and a pair of beautiful eyes stared at the blood-red bowstring. At this moment, an indescribable, terrible power spread out from her body. In a trance, Zhang Sunlai's heart trembled as if he saw a boundless mountain of corpses and a sea of blood emerging. Zhao Xingye stood in it, and under her feet were endless piles of white bones. At this moment, Zhao Xingye had a kind of demeanor belonging to the bloodthirsty queen. This kind of momentum in these years of battles and killings had made the whole bloodthirsty battlefield tremble more than once. Chapter 742. Late at night, in Lin Sun's room, Abai squatted on the ground, drinking bottle after bottle of liquor. She couldn't stop her tears from flowing down her face. She had been like this since Lin Sun told her about Hu Tong's death. She seemed to have lost her soul and looked very helpless. Lin Sun sat aside and watched her quietly, but his mood was quite complicated. Hu Tong was dead. His body was found on the battlefield. It had long been mutilated. His eyes, nose, heart, almost all parts of his body had been dug out by the enemy as trophies. He died too miserably. When Lin Sun found Hu Tong's body yesterday, he almost couldn't believe his eyes. A top figure in the reincarnation developing realm, a veteran overmatch who had been galloping in the bloodthirsty battlefield for 7 years, had died just like that. Lin Sun thought of the time when he drank with Hu Tong a few days ago. Hu Tong's heroic and hearty laughter seemed to ring in his ears again. In the end, Abai was still drunk. Lying on the ground, she mumbled some vague words. Even though her eyes were closed, tears still flowed down her cheeks. Lin Sun picked her up and put her on the bed. Then he sat on one side in a daze. A parting of life and death was undoubtedly the most painful thing in the world. And how many times had Abai experienced parting like today in the bloodthirsty battlefield all these years? When the news of the death of friends, comrades, and companions came again and again, who could bear such a blow and sorrow? Lin Sun remembered the first time he saw Abai. It was late at night, and she was kneeling on the ground alone, crying bitterly. The cruelest thing in the bloodthirsty battlefield is not the battle, but the blow and sorrow brought by death. Everyone may face death, and no one is sure who will die first. But as long as you are alive, you may have to face the bad news one by one. Perhaps only in the bloodthirsty battlefield can one deeply understand the feeling of this. Lin Sun's thoughts were flying. After a long time, he took a deep breath, and a touch of firmness flashed in his black eyes. One day, all this will change, the enemy will be destroyed, and Xiao Flower will never die. Lin Sun suddenly realized that perhaps Zhao Tai sent him to the bloodthirsty battlefield to let him witness all this. In the following days, the atmosphere in the bloodthirsty battlefield became tense. The army of the voodoo barbarian tribe was dispatched frequently, whistling on the battlefield and becoming more active and combative than before. The Empire, on the other hand, tightened their defensive line and switched from offense to defense. Even so, the situation was still not optimistic. All of the Empire's Xiozhi knew that they didn't have many resources left. They could barely hold on until the next time the passage to the Empire opened. Under such circumstances, there was no way they could engage in a large-scale battle with the enemy. Otherwise, once there was a shortage of resources, the Empire would fall into internal strife and collapse before the enemy could even reach them. The voodoo barbarian tribe seized this opportunity and began to attack frequently. They unscrupulously dispatched the army to give the Empire a heavy blow. The situation was dire. Even Lin Sun was deeply aware of this. In Camp 7, the number of casualties of the Empire's Xiozhi who had gone out to fight had increased dramatically. The shadow of death was like a haze, shrouding the hearts of every Empire's Xiozhi. The atmosphere in the camp became more and more gloomy and oppressive. There was no longer the liveliness of the past, and there was a somber and tense atmosphere everywhere. On this day, bloodthirsty battlefield, Silver Snow Ridge Kill. When an army of thousands of voodoo barbarians passed by the Silver Snow Ridge, a vigorous figure suddenly rushed out, carrying a heavy sword, and directly rushed up. The army of voodoo barbarians was shocked at first, and then burst into laughter. They all showed ferocious and disdainful expressions. A female practitioner of the Empire jumped out stupidly. It was not an ambush, but a suicide mission. The situation was really absurd. One person seemed too small and unbearable in the face of thousands of elite voodoo barbarians. But it just so happened that she seemed to be fearless as she charged head-on. Her figure was vigorous like a strong and ruthless wind as she pressed forward courageously. Her millet hair was flying in the wind, and the heavy sword in her hand was wrapped in sharp, killing intent. She was like a brave man who was going to fight to death alone, even if there were thousands of enemies. This person was shockingly Abi. Puff, puff. As soon as they fought, two strong voodoo barbarians were killed immediately, with blood bursting out. They were still shocked at the moment of death, as if they still couldn't believe that such a woman dared to fight with their army to death. The enemies were a little restless and immediately became furious. They shouted and surrounded Abi like a tide, intending to wipe her out. Abi looked fearless, with a kind of almost numb calmness on her beautiful face. Only a pair of clear eyes were flashing with burning hatred. Kill! She gritted her teeth and rushed forward recklessly, as if she had forgotten about life and death. She just wanted to kill as many enemies as possible, leaving everything behind her. When a person no longer cared about life and death, he was either forced to the extreme or had no way to retreat. But Abi was different. She just wanted to kill the enemies. Her former comrades, friends, and companions all died one after another, which made her almost collapse, and her heart was filled with endless sorrow and hatred. Rather than living like this, it was better to die in killing the enemies. Kill! Blood was bursting out, and the roars of the enemies sounded one after another. Everything in front of her was dark red. Abi felt carefree, although there had already been a lot of shocking scars on her body, and she was stained with blood. She felt very happy. It seemed that as long as she killed one more enemy, she could vent the sorrow and hatred in her heart, and let those dead comrades die in peace. However, she was only one person after all. Even though she was not afraid of life and death, she seemed too small and unbearable in the face of thousands of voodoo barbarian army. Just for a moment, she had been seriously injured and trapped there, like a cornered beast fighting and might die at any time. But Abi didn't have any mood fluctuation at all, and still fought fiercely like a madman. Her resolute and fierce posture even surprised and moved those strong voodoo barbarians, and then they were furious. A woman dared to despise them like this. Kill! They were also completely enraged and attacked with all their strength. Ha ha! A group of bastards. Even if I die today, I will drag you down with me. Abi was laughing and tears flowed out. The blood on her body was gurgling, and even her beautiful milk-colored long hair was dyed with blood. She was not crazy, and she knew that death was not far away. But so what? Yes, death was death. What was there to be afraid of? Swish! A snow-white bone spear swept over with fierce momentum, tearing the void and killing towards Abi with an unstoppable and terrifying momentum. Abi knew that she couldn't stop it, but she didn't step back. Instead, she rushed up fiercely, ignoring the possibility of being pierced in the chest, and slashed towards the owner of the bone spear with her sword. Life for life. Abi seemed to have been waiting for this moment for a long time, and she was so determined that there was no hesitation. However, the snow-white bone spear broke from the middle before it fell, and the head of the owner of the bone spear was thrown into the air. Too fast. It was so fast that Abi didn't have time to react, and the enemy had been killed. This Abi was stunned. Pooh! 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 A wave of muffled sounds rose and fell in the vicinity, and the enemies that besieged nearby were killed on the spot at almost the same moment. Streams of blood sprayed out and dyed the void red. In the blink of an eye, the area of 30 meters around Abi formed an empty area, and the ground was covered with corpses. Whem! It was also at this moment that Abi saw a broken blade that was jade white like snow and almost transparent. It was like a wisp of flowing light as it revolved and appeared in front of her, and it was suffused with a clear and holy silver brilliance. Go! A voice sounded in her ears, and Abi didn't have time to react before her arm was grabbed by someone and fled towards the distance. Why is it you again? Abi finally saw that familiar face clearly, but she wasn't moved at all. Instead, she was slightly annoyed and shouted, "Why did you save me? Do you care if I want to die? Even if you want to die, you can't die at the hands of the enemy." The person who came was Lin's son. His expression was calm, and so was his voice, but it revealed an indisputable feeling. Abi was struggling, but how could she break free from Lin Sun's arm? Chase them. Behind them, a group of strong voodoo barbarians roared and were completely irritated. They were just a couple of shameless men and women, but they dared to ignore them. If they escaped, it would absolutely be a great shame. Kill. They were aggressive like a tide, madly attacking. However, for Lin Sun, although this army of strong voodoo barbarians was large in number, almost all of them were at the level of voodoo barbarian strongman. Even their leader was just a strongman in the spirit awakening realm. In Lin Sun's eyes, this kind of power was not worth mentioning at all. Puff, 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 puff. The broken blade flew across the air, scattering dreamy brilliance and whistling back and forth in the void. At the same time, strong voodoo barbarians were killed on the spot one after another. It was too sharp. Controlled by Lin Sun's spiritual awareness, the broken blade appeared and disappeared like a ghost, vividly displaying the power of a magic weapon. In just a few breaths, dozens of strong voodoo barbarians were beheaded like paper paste. Lin Sun swept away the clouds like a whirlwind. Shrill screams and angry roars sounded in the field. Those strong voodoo barbarians were all shocked and couldn't believe it. They really couldn't imagine how a young man could be so terrible. He was just like the legendary young devil named Lin Shi. The only difference was that Lin Shi was good at archery, while the young man in front of them used a mysterious broken blade that could be described as horrible. No, that guy seems to be the legendary Lin Shi. Suddenly, the leader of the voodoo barbarian army seemed to realize something. His face suddenly changed, and he cried out involuntarily. As soon as his words came out, the voodoo barbarian army became more restless, surprised, and panicked. Lin Shi, how could it be him? Chapter 743. In a valley, Heavenly Soundsei Lin Sun was dressing Abi's wound. Abi stared at him blankly and suddenly asked, "Why did you save me? I just want to be free. It's too painful to live. I don't want to hear the bad news of my friends all the time in the future." Lin Sun said casually, "Whether it's revenge or to change all the pain you've suffered, there's only hope when you're alive." Hope? Abi smiled bitterly. For thousands of years, the Empire and voodoo barbarian bastards have been fighting in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Who can change all this? It will change one day, Lin Sun said calmly. Do you believe it? Abi asked. Lin Sun looked into Abi's eyes seriously and said, "You know, for thousands of years, many practitioners of the Empire have fought here. If they had given up at that time, do you think the Empire would still have today's situation?" Haha, I didn't expect you to be so considerate of the people of the Empire. I really underestimated your ambition before. Abi sneered. I don't have such a noble consciousness. Lin Sun shrugged and then pondered. I'm just like you. I don't want to see the pain you've gone through continue to live. In the end, he sighed softly. You're in pain, and so are the other generals and soldiers of the Empire. But who dares to give up easily? Do you still remember that saying, Xiao flower is invincible because of bloodthirsty, and the Empire survives because of wars? Albai was silent for a moment. She patted her butt and stood up. There was a smile on her wild and beautiful face. You're really not a good persuader. Do you think I will care if you discuss national affairs with a woman like me? At least, as long as you don't court death, I won't waste my efforts. Lin Sun also stood up and said casually, I don't have many friends in the number 7 camp. If you die, the pain you're going through now will definitely fall on me. So, as a friend, I certainly won't watch you court death. Abi was stunned. Suddenly, she stretched out her arms silently and hugged Lin Sun tightly. After a long time, she murmured in a low voice, Thank you, toy boy. Abi returned to normal from that day and no longer risked her life to fight as before. But Lin Sun was not happy at all. The situation in the bloodthirsty battlefield was becoming more and more turbulent and tense. Wind and rain were everywhere, and bad news could be heard from time to time in the camp. Old Huang went out to carry out a mission and met with trouble. One day, Lin Sun was about to go to Huang, the guard of the camp, when he heard such bad news from Lu Wenting. Lin Sun was stunned for a long time before he turned around and left silently. Another friend left. That night, Lin Sun drank a lot of wine alone and remembered the first time he drank with Huang in the pub. "My lord, do you know? I've been in this King bloodthirsty battlefield for 5 years. In these 5 years, I've changed my companions again and again. Familiar ones, unfamiliar ones. Until now, I've almost forgotten who I should remember. Everyone says that my life is tough and that it's a miracle that I haven't died in 5 years. However, I know that I'm just King afraid of death. That's why every time I fight, I do everything I can to prevent myself from dying. That's why I'm lucky enough to survive until now. But it's too painful to live like this." Every day, when he woke up, his first thought was how to survive the day. Who the cares about the future? Alas, I can't help it. This is bloodthirsty battlefield. Death happens all the time. Maybe one day I will also. Huang's drunken voice seemed to be still in Lin Sun's ears, but he had already left. In the night, a sigh came from Lin Sun's room. "Old Huang, you King Jinx." Early the next morning, Lin Sun left the camp. Bloodthirsty battlefield, bloodthirsty battlefield. A team of hundreds of voodoo barbarians was on the road. Although the team was small in number, each one of them was an elite with 5 spirit awakening realm practitioners in charge. Their target was a team of casual practitioners in the number 6 camp of the Empire. Stop! Suddenly, a leading spirit awakening realm practitioner narrowed his eyes and saw a figure standing on the road in the distance. It was a young man in a moon-white robe, with long black hair hanging down to his waist. With his hands behind his back, he stared at the distant sky in a daze, as if he was in a daze. Bloodthirsty battlefield had long been an area of constant bloodshed. Voodoo barbarians and imperial practitioners had carried out countless bloody battles here. But today, there was a young man standing there all by himself with a casual bearing. This was too abnormal. The leader of this team of voodoo barbarians was a ruthless man from the fire barbarian branch. His name was Yin Jioga, who was very knowledgeable and experienced. He saw something wrong at a glance. "Be careful, everyone." A strong uneasiness surged in Yin Jioga's heart. He made a prompt decision to stop the team. "Sir, it's just a young man of the human tribe. We can kill him easily. What are you worried about?" A voodoo barbarian muttered. "What do you know?" Yin Jioga scolded and looked more dignified. He always felt that the young man in the distance was a little familiar, but he couldn't remember. If Lin Shire came, we would have to be ready for him. But this guy doesn't even have a bow in his hand. That voodoo barbarian still didn't take it seriously. But his words were like a thunderbolt, which made Yin Jioga's face change greatly. He finally remembered why he felt that the young man in the distance was a little familiar. This guy looked almost the same as Lin Shire in the legend. The only difference was that he didn't have the famous white bone bow and a dark and terrible arrow. "Damn, retreat!" Yin Jioga roared. He was sure that the young man must be Lin Shire. Even if the latter didn't carry a bow this time, his terrible reputation frightened Yin Jioga. What was more, a person like Lin Shire dared to come here alone. How could he come and die? The more Yin Jioga thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. "Sir, what's wrong with you? Retreat? Why should I retreat?" Seeing Yin Jioga's strong reaction, the other voodoo barbarians in this team were a little stunned. They didn't understand how big a threat a young man could be. But Yin Jioga had already fled. Like a gust of wind, he ran and shouted angrily, "A bunch of idiots! That guy is Lin Shire. Are you waiting to die?" His voice echoed like thunder. All of a sudden, all the voodoo barbarians in this team were dumbfounded. The guy was really Lin Shire? Run! Sensing that something was wrong, these voodoo barbarians didn't fight, but fled immediately. They couldn't help it. Lin Shire was now synonymous with young demon god in the voodoo barbarian camp. He was absolutely notorious. Rumors about him could even make life-and-death realm kings restless. Under such circumstances, who dared to stay? However, although they reacted quickly, it was too late. A thunderous roar suddenly resounded in this world.